Councilmember Hatfield.
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Here.
Councilmember Grau.
Here.
Councilmember Wong is out of state tonight, so he's not here. And Mayor Winchittle.
Here. All right, and as Nate mentioned, Councilmember Wong is home helping family out of state, so he will not be joining us tonight and will not be able to join us on Zoom. So he is out for the evening. So, all right, with that, we'll move into item number 4, adopting the agenda. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Hubbard, second by Councilmember Hatfield to adopt the agenda. Discussion. Hearing none, calling roll. Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Mayor Winchittle, yes. Passes 4-0. All right, we move on to visitor presentation. One thing before, we do have one presentation tonight from Martha Brannon from His House Foundation. I just want to make a little announcement and say a little happy birthday to Myrtle Kemp. Will be 105 years old on Sunday, July 12th. 105. Think of what that young lady's seen. And she's really healthy. That's the thing, that she doesn't look a day over 80. So to be that sharp and be able to I hope she remembers everything. That's amazing. 105. So happy birthday on the 12th to Myrtle Kemp. So with that, I will turn it over to Martha. Yep, right up to this fine podium that we have. I mean table.
Now, I didn't bring paper to hand out with what I was going to talk about. Do you want me to email you guys, or can we just talk about it now and then I'll send it to you later?
It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to update everybody on, we had opened the resource center. So I'm Martha from His House Foundation. This is Vanessa. Thank you very much for allowing us to come back. We were here about a year ago, not here, over there, over by there. Over there. So about a year ago, we had come to town and we opened up our resource center in the basement of the Moravian Church. And then we created the food sharing program called Abundance, where we capture food that would otherwise go in the waste stream and deliver it to people that don't have access to the food shelves, barriers to food. We were doing in 2019, we were up to, at our peak, about 4,000 pounds a month of diverting and redistributing. We were delivering mostly to the homeless, and we were also doing some follow-up with the Families Moving Forward program with the homeless starter kits and making sure that they had all their basic necessities. And then we did do the sleep out in right here for homelessness, to create awareness for homelessness and to start creating a discretionary fund for the people that were going to potentially fall behind in rents. That was for 2019. And then of course, my 2020 looks a little bit different, you know. So what we have noticed is because we were able to step into that space in 2019, in 2020, we were able to respond to the crisis. We do a weekly report for the emergency operation call in the health department. Our call volume is up for basic necessities, including food response, is up 300%. So our calls traditionally come from the social workers in the schools and the community engagement officers in the schools, which would be cultural liaisons. And then we do get calls directly from clients, but they usually say, my caseworker told me to call. So we immediately stepped into the space of delivering bath tissue and cleaning products immediately. And then we were delivering the food from the food shelves in all cities, including Chaska. And we were doing that with the CDC guidelines of food safety, or Health and Human Services safety. Yep. We were working directly with the health department to get that done for people that were in crisis. So stepped into that space of emergency response. So now our resource center is more of a crisis response center. And one of the biggest things I had talked to Councilperson Wong about was the county has preemptively been addressing homelessness by renting rooms in the hotels. And we deliver food daily to all hotels that are participating in that program. And we're usually at 5 hotels. Not all of them are right here in Chaska, but we want to make sure that that's such a blessing that we are addressing homelessness in such a creative way that we want to make sure that we're addressing any needs that our people might have in addition to the hotels. We want to make sure that we're managing that. We work closely with the community officer, Julie Yankee, to make sure that they have a contact for any misbehaviors going on there. So we deliver food. Chick-fil-A over in Chanhassen makes us 50 sandwiches every day. And then we pick up pizza at Little Caesars right here. And then other foods that are donated from the food shelves in our food redistribution program. And we deliver it to all the hotels every day. And then we bring basic necessities with us as well. Laundry, which we're addressing the laundry needs, the quarters. And then, of course, we let everyone come down to the resource center, and everything's free in the resource center with no limits, no boundaries, no service area. So we want to make sure everybody has what they need so that they can work intensively with their county case manager, which is so phenomenal to have access to a high-level case manager like Dr. Scott's program, people, and then move out of homelessness and into our community. And that's where we do the follow-up. So now our food redistribution is up to 6,000 pounds a month through the Environmental Services Division of Carver County. And our resource center has become more of a crisis resource center, but we're able to continue to address those needs due to some streamlining. So we're addressing the needs of the community. We are able to get food and basic necessities to the people that need it. And then the one thing that we are concerned about then is when the eviction stay is done, which July 13th, I think, is the next payment. We're just concerned about what crisis that's going to create for the community. And I know everybody has discussed that. So that's his house, resource center, and food redistribution. Any questions?
Questions for Martha?
Yeah, no, it's you go.
Okay. When you visited us last time, you talked about bridging the gap in homelessness.
Right.
So they, they get a place to live, but they don't have anything to furnish it. Or do you still continue to do that? So you're doing a lot of work.
Yes. So that's where we wanted to come into the community because we were getting a lot of calls from our original sites. We were over in Minnetonka site for about 10 years in the thrift level, but over here we realized that we needed some of the infrastructure, and originally it was to walk alongside with families moving forward. And we still, we furnished 3 apartments over the weekend. One of them was a veteran that got an apartment with his son and moved into their apartment. We showed up with their mattresses, their furniture, and he had been homeless in the community. And we put them into the county's hotel program and just moved them into an apartment over the weekend. It's unbelievable. Him and his stepson were in a van that wasn't working in a Perkins restaurant that was closed. And he asked us to fix his van. And I said, you know what, dude, let's work on some housing. It's a lot. So of course, he's been texting me all day. We wanted to make sure that, we dropped off food, we dropped off everything. And that was just one of 3 that we did over the weekend. So it's a lot, but you know what? We had gotten ready, not knowing, that we would have to be at this crisis level.
Are you taking donations currently?
Oh, yeah.
For like furniture and?
I'm trying to do furniture now just because of the resources and the capacity that our organization, we're all volunteers. And so I give everybody 100% pay raise like every day because, so what we do now with furniture is I'm really trying to use Furniture Depot out in Waconia with Freshwater Church, and we pay the bill. So we are able to send our families out there and say, pick out whatever you want. And then they give us a really good deal. And then His House Foundation, they deliver it for $10 or something. It's better than we could ever do, driving around picking up couches, and that keeps us then able to focus on, the case management. That's where we have to work on, because otherwise, people don't move through the crisis if we're running around picking up couches. So, but yes,
Oh, that networking is awesome to hear. Families moving forward, I know that they had suspended things over the stay-at-home order. They were putting some of the families in like hotels or extended stays. Am I correct?
all started with the hotel program. I believe Dr. Richard Scott would say that when the Drake had the fire at Christmas, the Drake is the big homeless shelter downtown Minneapolis, then some of the philanthropic population got together and created a fund to try and creatively address homelessness. And so that's when I think that some people started having access to money to put homeless people in hotels. Then when the pandemic hit, then everybody was able to expand that program. So I know that all the shelters, even downtown Minneapolis, is using hotels whenever they can. So I think that families moving forward using hotels would only be because that's what everyone's doing. You don't want to have that close in. They have their resource center, in the basement of the Shepherd of the Hill. So they were trying to prevent that.
Yeah, and
Volunteers.
that's still kind of suspended, it sounds like, maybe. Okay.
Yes, until they change.
Sure.
Yep. I used to work for them a little bit. I filled in when they have a staffing change. And so it's just the close-knit environment, I think, of both the volunteers, the other church members. Typically, your volunteer might be in one of the categories that would make you more vulnerable.
You said the eviction stay order is set to end, or has it already ended?
No, it has not ended. July 13th is the newest date I've heard, and then
July 1st, so that's good.
It was July 1st, then they pushed it out till the 13th. And there's no determination if it will go further out or if that will be the final.
maybe you guys know more about that than I do, but we're just always concerned about that because some people didn't qualify for their unemployment or their stimulus check. So we have a large group of people that are requesting money for rental assistance right now. On my desk is requests totaling about, for this community, about 14,000 of people that didn't qualify for any other program. So what my process is that our team runs them through the programs that already exist. We go through the CAP agency, we'll go through emergency assistance and wait for a denial on that. And then it comes to our desk where we would have to consider it with discretionary funds. And of course, I don't have that many discretionary funds. So then we're out trying to, partnering with the Lions. The Chaska Lions paid our rent for the whole year at the resource center. So that was wonderful to not have to use then fundraising money for operating money. So we're just really concerned about the eviction stay.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
All right, any other questions for Martha?
Just one question. I think I asked this last time. I like to ask this one. What's the best way the community can support you?
I think, donations are wonderful. And one thing that has really come to the head of what we're really requesting now is they're making a route for the hotel delivery of the food.
Yep. So you can use volunteers from the community to offset that donation delivery piece, and then we can keep working on all of the other aspects.
And then the other thing is the laundry supplies, because the people in the hotels, and that's something I'm working with the Chaska Rotary on, is the hotels, everybody's using quarters, and it usually costs about $30 to really do your laundry. And so we're really working on collecting quarters and laundry detergent. And then of course I need $1 million. That's all? Is that what? Okay. I'll start with $1 million.
Start with $1 million.
Yeah. So we do give all of our money away, and we do that through utilities. Gas cards are a big one for the people transitioning through various programs. And then, of course, rent. So that's all I got. Did you guys, anybody need my cards? You still got them from last time? Okay. Thank you very much.
You have, is there, I mean, I know that it's kind of all over, but are there set hours that if people need to contact you, can they, are you there every day?
24/7.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's 24/7, but
So what I am doing is when the county shuts off their phones, like at 4:30 on Friday, I call everybody and say, don't turn your phones off yet. I'm really nervous. So, but then I will be the weekend so that we can support the hotel, the business owners of our community that are trying to support our programming. So people text me everything from I need to get in the resource center to, there's a crisis at one of the hotels. So we try and respond to that at the level that we need to respond at. I keep the resource center locked because I want to have everything for the people that are in crisis. If I leave it open to the public, then of course I won't have brand new pots and pans when you need it for transitioning through homelessness. So it's still kind of creative. We're in flux. That's a smile. Thank you.
Martha.
thank you.
Thank you.
Vanessa.
All right. Anyone else under visitor presentation? Kevin, is there anybody holding or in the waiting room? All right. We will then move on to item 6, approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no discussions or corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I had just one tiny thing I saw. I don't know if it really matters, but under like the council members things, some of the notes that I had put in for things, they labeled it council member Graz. So I don't know if that really matters to
Good, it's an official record.
amend. So, and then I don't know what happened to yours. So I don't know if we got them combined or what, but that was just the one thing that I saw.
Justin told us he wanted to take credit for your.
All that work, all that hard work.
That's such a good comment.
You know what I would suggest with something like that is maybe circle or highlight and email them to us, and we can get those changed in there, so we make sure we get the right quotes attributed to the right person.
Okay. So that would probably just be the
We can
amendment.
just approve them with it.
Contingent upon those changes being made.
I did notice it said, noted she attended the opening Hawks under me.
I was just like, oh,
Just the final.
Yeah, for like the notes, it says Councilmember Graf. Noted she attended the opening. Not usually the pronoun that I go by, but
Send them to Vicky. Let's just copy Denise and Vicky.
yep,
For us, I mean, we'll make sure it gets done.
sounds good.
All right, any other comments or questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
Minutes contingent on those changes.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
second by Councilmember Graf.
second by Councilmember Gra to approve the previous meeting minutes with the corrections that will be sent off. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Gra,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield, Mayor Winchell, yes, passes 4-0. All right, moves us to consent agenda item. There are items that we need to vote on, but not necessarily have a conversation. Although tonight I would like to just talk, one of the things under consent tonight is the city administrator's annual review. We held that last week, and I just want to just make a couple comments and then open it up to the council as well. In doing Matt's review, I will tell you that as a mayor, we are very blessed to have a guy like Matt here. He is so responsive to our needs, to the community's needs. He will He is never afraid to make any phone call, to talk to anyone about any issue. And quite honestly, he will get I've had calls and he said, I'll just call him. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. So, I mean, that's the thing that you really want is it's about the communication piece. We've heard that over the past few months. It's all about communicating. And I think that's the important part. Matt is so good about communicating, and we talk about it. We talk about it often. We can't always say yes, but it's always say no. That's important. And I think that we can have that conversation, be able to sit down with someone and explain to them. And generally, when that's said and done, they might not agree with us, but they understand in our decision on why we're doing things. So it's really great to have Matt on our team, and we're happy to have him here, and hopefully he sticks around a while.
Thank you.
Good.
I will share the same thoughts and feelings. As we discussed last week in the closed meeting, just, yeah, the communication piece, communicating with people about things and kind of breaking them down, making them easy to understand for the, public, and then internally with staff, and just the rapport and relationships that you have. You do an exceptional job, so.
Anyone else?
I was just going to add the same as I said to you last time. I think the word to me when I think of you is genuine. You're the same. You're very genuine. You mean well. You do what you mean, and you act the same, and you respond to the same, regardless of who's asking the question. If it's one of us, if it's someone in the community, someone who's happy with what you're doing, or someone who's even maybe not so happy with what you're doing, you're generally still, what we see with you is what we get, and I think people come to love and respect that from you.
Thanks.
Very important. So.
Echo what they all said.
I didn't hear what you said, but.
I'll just say, I mean, I feel blessed to be in this community. I've been here for about 20 years now, and I've raised my family here, and I just get excited about the things that we do that I think are very different than what a lot of communities are doing. I think one of them is a project we're going to talk about tonight with the Par 30. I mean, these are just projects that just don't occur in other cities, and it's not because of anything special we do. It's because we have a community that cares, and they step up to the plate. And, there's a number of people here who have stepped up to the plate because they care about the community and want something special. And to be able to work in an environment like that is really pretty unique. So I love being here. I greatly enjoy it, and I really appreciate the relationships I've come to generate being in the community. This is the longest place I've ever lived in my life, so I consider this home. Thank you.
I will just add through this COVID process, even though this wasn't part of last year's review, but the COVID process says Matt has really stepped forward. We have been tasked with some, how do I want to say it, some interesting things that we've had to work through, and he always thinks things out, but he's not afraid to ask for help. We have a group of 13 people in the EOC, or is it 14 now? I think it's 14, that help make some of those challenging decisions that we've had to make over the year. But Matt's always kind of been the lead, or always will get that comment out. So we were very fortunate, because we have been pretty much the steady through this storm, and just moving forward at a steady pace, using we always use a 2-week window. That's how we operate. We try not to get too far out ahead of ourselves, and just have tried to stay ahead. And that's been a tremendous piece of making that a pretty calming event, even though it's pretty scary and it's not over with yet. And we got a lot to deal with COVID. And so again, thanks, Matt. So appreciate that. All right, anyone else? Otherwise, I have one other question under consent, though. I'm still not understanding why we have to split that lot in Pinnacle Heights when they own the whole site. I know all they really want to do is put the clubhouse in part of it, but it's a phase. What difference is, why is there a lot split? They own the whole parcel. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know if you know the answer. I mean, my general sense is it probably has something to do with the association, especially if it's dividing the lot between common amenities and the rest of the development. That's probably a better question for Kevin as to why. I know we don't have any concerns with it. That they still fulfill and meet all the requirements of the development itself. So that I feel confident. As far as the reason precipitating it, I can certainly find out from Kevin, but we haven't had any concerns about it.
It just, I mean, I know it was in, when we talked about it, and it's, and now here it is in this, and I thought we did a lot split when we initially did the approval. So I don't understand why this lot split is here again.
We did a land swap with the church.
There was a land swap, but there was a lot split as well, I think.
So
And unless I've got them crossed up, but this isn't making sense to me about why there's a
Oh,
lot.
I see it here. So it does have to do with the amenities. So the amenity center, so they do want to have that separate from the rest of it. And you're correct that there was a lot split done at the beginning, but the description of it was not accurate when the final plan was done to encompass everything.
So this is the same lot split, only it's being corrected?
Yes. So it's in essence making it bigger to be able to encompass everything that they wanted of the common center. So,
But isn't it all part of the same thing? So why do they have to split it? It just makes me feel not.
assuming it has to do with their association and that they want to have their association have a separate lot for that because it's a pretty big amenity that they have there. But
That maybe makes sense then.
but at the end of the day, they're basically putting a clubhouse building in there. I mean, they have a lot of amenities in there. So I'm assuming they just want to have it separate because it's going to be association run. But you are correct, there was a lot split. And in essence, this lot split is basically, now that the plan is basically done, is encompassing everything that the first lot split was meant to encompass.
Mm-hmm. I also know this has to do with the developer's relationship with the property owner and their ability to complete closing. They're in that process right now. So this helps facilitate that ability for them.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have any questions on consent? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard, second by Councilmember Hatfield to approve consent agenda. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Gra.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. All right, moves us on to item 8, action items. Start with that, item 8A, adopt resolution 2020-51, the 2020 overlay program.
So Mayor and Councilmember, the item in front of you tonight is in relation to our overlay program, which is part of our CIP program. You'll notice, and we'll talk about it tonight with the budget amendment that we do, that we are recommending a good portion of our CIP program not be done this year because of the reduction in revenues because of COVID. This is not one of them. We don't want to get behind on street reconditioning just because we already were behind when we started our CIP program and want to make sure that we keep on track with this. So we did budget we actually budgeted almost close to $400,000 for the overlay program this year. One of the things I'll just point out that I think was really strategic that our public works director, Brian Jung, did is when he started to see the oil prices drop pretty dramatically, normally you'd see this go out for bid in the spring and we'd bring it back so they could have a contract in order and get moving. he waited because he saw the petroleum prices were going down, and it had a dramatic impact on our actual bidding that we received. So we are about $80,000 under with the lowest bid from GMH Asphalt at $309,000. We're about $80,000 under budget, and quite frankly, this year we'll take that. Just because we are having to do budget amendments this year. So the streets that will be included in this are basically the areas close to the Purple Brick Road entrance to the high school. So right off of Hunter Mark, Manuela, Christian Drive, Christian Parkway, some of Pioneer Trail, and then we do have a small section down in Yellow Brick Road that will also be overlaid. So if we accept this bid tonight, we would expect that in August, we'd actually see the program moving forward. And we have worked with GMH in the past, and they've been a good contractor to work with. So staff is recommending approval of this contract.
Why are we doing some of Pioneer when that's County Road?
Trying to think of what section of Pioneer it is.
And that, because that was the other part, I was kind of, it just says Pioneer. Because one of the things that I don't know if that's ours at the roundabout by where you go into Weston Ridge, or not Weston Ridge. Right across, it's across from the town course in there, but it's across the railroad tracks. That addition there, that roundabout's really in bad shape.
Part of it is county, but part of it's not. Because somebody asked me a
I don't
question
know if
years
that's what we're
ago.
doing. We're fixing that roundabout because.
Whatever section we're doing on Pioneer Trail, I don't know specifically where it's at, but it's going to be really small. So it's got to be a repair for something that's occurred. And I'm not sure if this has to do with the
Water main break?
The water main break that happened on Pioneer. I assume it does because we still had a second wear course that we had to put on top of that. So I'm assuming that's what that is. So that's the section from basically the Quick Trip all the way up to Village Road. So I'm almost positive it's that second layer of that.
All right.
And normally that would be a county expense, but because it was our water main that broke, it becomes our expense.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense. You look at these bids and it's really interesting because GMH is higher on everything, but then you look at mobilization, what a difference. And that's how they got the bid. It's a difference but they're local.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they're working on some of the other projects that are going on in town, and that's why the mobilization is so low. I mean, obviously we have the project up on Lyman, and then we also have the project out on County Road 44, and I'm not sure if they're related with those two, but sometimes just the fact that they're working in town can really reduce their cost of actually getting people to work there.
Okay. All right, anyone else have any questions on this? Otherwise, I think it's pretty straightforward. I'd entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2020-51.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Gra. Second by Councilmember Hatfield to adopt resolution 2020-51, which is our 2020 overlay program. Discussion. Hearing none, Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Gra.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. All right, moves us to item 8B, annual 2019 financial reports.
Mayor, Councilmember, each year the city of Chaska is required to go through an official audit process to basically audit our financial reports from the previous year. So right now we're not looking at where we're at now. We're looking at the whole year 2019 and basically looking at the audit for that. So our Administrative Service Director, Noel Grasick, is here to go over just a general summary of what the audit looked at. But then we also have Jackie from MMKR, who is our audit firm, to go over their findings from this year's audit.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Matt, City Administrator. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to go through our financial reports from the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019. Each year, the city produces a comprehensive annual financial report. There's a copy of this in PDF form in your packet. It's also available on our website. We'll be reviewing that tonight, in addition to a set of reports that are also attached as a PDF for the fire relief. We do bring those reports from the fire relief before the council because they are included in the city's comprehensive annual financial report, since they are a pension entity that we support, the city supports as a part of its operations. Before we get started here, I want to just maybe give you a quick highlight of 5 key numbers, just to give you some perspective on what does the operations of the city represent. If we look at total expenditures that are reported in this report for the year, they were up in 2019 by 12.3 million, which is a 14% increase. So we've reached 100 million total expenditures in 2019. So last year it was, 12.3 million less. We've sort of reached that 100 million mark. That's the total of all expenditures in the city. When we look at our enterprise funds, which are electric, water, sewer, stormwater, there are recreational activities such as community center, curling arenas, and golf courses, that's 55.1 million. So that's 55% of our total operations are those enterprise type operations, a very significant portion of our operations. If we take the electric fund out of that group, that is 41.2% of our total operations. So that's one of our most significant funds in the city. Typically with a city, the general fund is where all of your governmental services for things such as public works, park and recreation, your building services, your police, your fire. We have a general fund that's about 17 million or 17% of our operations. So as you can see, the general fund is a very significant portion, but we also have a much larger operation with all these enterprise funds. When we look at our general fund, we have to look at what are the revenues, and one of the key revenues that supports the general fund is our tax levy. Well, we have about 5.7 million or 5.7% of our total operations goes into the general fund from the tax levy. Now, our total tax levy for the year was about 9.7 million. So a portion of that is used to fund equipment replacement and some debt service obligations. But we've gone from a $100 million operation down to our tax levy of about 9.7 million. So the tax levy is significant, but there's a much broader perspective that is represented by these financial reports with all the activity going on in our enterprise funds and our debt service funds and our capital project funds. So just to give you a perspective, we reached that 100 million mark in total operations. Now this report each year is broken down into 3 key sections. The introductory section is sort of that inner overview that provides a sense of what is the community and what does a first-time reader want to sort of learn about this, about the community. There's the letter of transmittal, which begins on page 1. This provides a general overview of the city's operations and what the financial operations of the city include. There's the organizational chart that shows the administrative staff as well as the political body, which is the city council, and your advisory commissions, such as planning commission and park board commissions and their roles. The second section is the meat of the report, and that is the financial section. The key to the financial section is found on page 11, and that is the opinion that is issued by the report by the auditor. Our current auditor is MMKR. The opinion that they issued on page 12 is a unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. What that means is this report and all the financial statements in the report are the responsibility of the city to prepare and present. The auditors come in and review that, and it is in their determination that these statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial positions of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining funds information of the city as of December 31st, 2019. So there's no modifications on that. It's what they refer to as a clean opinion. That's the highest opinion that can be issued for this type of audit. The next section of the report is the management and discussion section that would begin on page 15. This is a more detailed analysis of what has occurred in the year. In here, we look at some of the individual funds. We look at budget to actual discussions. What were some of the variances that we saw for increased or decreases on revenues or expenditures, as well as some of the other analysis that we look at during the year from the operations. A couple things I just want to highlight. On page 30 and 31 are the two statements that are what we refer to as the entity-wide. This is sort of the overall presentation of what is the city's financial position. There's a lot of adjustments that are made to generate these statements because we do have to implement some of the full accrual type accounting to make this presentation. We don't usually use that as a part of our funds reporting like we do for the general fund and the other governmental funds. But altogether at year end, our financial position was $190.6 million. So our operations were 100 million, our total financial position is 190 million. So it's almost 2 times our operations. The overall change in our net position, we did go down about 7.2 million. This fluctuates from year to year based on the types of activities that occur each year. Our net unrestricted position for the year was about 21.1 million. This is in a negative position, but this is because we have a lot of activity that is restricted or has already been allocated to other purposes. So that's our net position from an entity-wide position. When auditors, MMKR, go through their presentation, they will be highlighting the entity-wide statement in a brief slide. 2 key funds I do want to address, though, is the general fund. That would be one of our major funds. It's on page 34. In here, we have an unassigned fund balance of $777,000. This is a decrease of about $128,000 from last year. This is on total expenditures of $17 million. We did see in 2019 a lot of one-time activity type expenditures that were incurred, and those were funded by some one-time revenue sources and one-time set of transfers that were made to cover those one-time activities. So we did see a slight decrease in our fund balance in the general fund. The second fund, which is our other primary fund, is our electric fund. That's on page 40 and 41 of the report. Our net assets for the fund are net assets unrestricted are $5.1 million. This does represent an increase of $700,000 from operations last year on a total expenses of $35.2 million on an operating basis. Now, one change that we did make this year is we have always had a franchise fee that is paid by the electric fund to the general fund. That has always been shown as an expense in the electric fund and a revenue to the general fund. We have reclassified that instead of being a revenue and expense to now be a transfer from the electric fund and a transfer to into the general fund. What this does is it changes how we calculate our net operating income in the electric fund. It does not change the financial position of either fund. It is just a change in how we are accounting for that. It does allow us in the future to show that transfer, which is a payment in lieu of taxes, as a true transfer instead of as a franchise fee. And so this is something that we've reviewed with the auditor and with legal counsel for making this reporting change. And again, it does not change the financial position of either fund. It's just a reporting change. On page 43 are the notes, the financial statements. This is the detailed disclosures that go through the various assets, liabilities, fund balance positions, and discusses them in detail. So when we have analysts from financial institutions or from bond rating agencies such as S&P and Moody's reviewing our reports, this is where they're doing a lot of their analysis to try to understand what are the activities and the financial positions of the city by reviewing these notes in detail. The third section of the report is the statistical section. It begins on page 130. This is an area of the report that shows 10-year trend information. So you can see changes in revenues, expenses, net operations, and also net positions as of year end for the last 10 years. And again, this is something that is used by the analysts who are looking at our overall tax base, changes in tax base, major taxpayers. These are all statistics that You will also see, like when we bring our official statements before the council for issuance of debt, a lot of the statistics that we use there also come from the same statistical section. So that's the overview of the city's comprehensive financial report. There is another set of reports, just I want to highlight briefly, and that is the fire relief report. They have an annual financial report. They also have a state compliance report and a auditor's communications. Their reports have been submitted to the Board of Trustees for the Fire Relief Association, and they're being brought before the council because in our CAFR, there is a note disclosure under pension liabilities that does discuss the fact that there is an obligation for the city to support that benefit that has been approved previously by council for the fire relief. So that is a part of what is audited each year as a separate audit by the auditors, and it's then incorporated into our city report each year. At this time, I'm going to have Jackie Heigl from the auditing firm MMKR just do an overview of their work and their findings for the year.
Well, thank you. At the city work session tonight, we went in detail through the city's CAFR and the audit results for the 2019 year. So the presentation we have for tonight will be more of a high-level presentation of the results of the audit for 2019. One comment I want to make before I start the presentation is just to remind everyone that the financial report is as of December 31st, 2019. And as you all know, the economic conditions have changed. So just keep that in mind as you're reading through your financial report for the 2019 year. The first slide I have here on the next slide summarizes our role as auditors. As an auditor, we're here to issue an opinion on the city's basic financial statements. It's the city's responsibility for the numbers and the financial information that is included in that comprehensive annual financial report. As part of our audit, we test the internal controls and the compliance over the financial statement audit and also with the Minnesota state laws and regulations. Every year, the Office of the State Auditor puts out a legal compliance manual with specific statutes that as auditors we're required to test for. So we're not necessarily testing every statute, but the one specifically in that manual that is put out from year to year. And the next slide then summarizes the results of the audit for the 2019 year. We issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on those basic financial statements. That is the opinion you're looking for. It's the top opinion. There is an emphasis of matter paragraph that we implemented GASB statement number 84 related with fiduciary activities. And this was more of a change in the reporting of what was previously known as agency funds of the cities. Some of those specific funds were the Builder's Deposit Fund, the Developer Fund, the Met Council Collection Fund, and the Police Evidence Fund. So instead of being reported as agencies funds, those are moved within the general fund or in their own individual fund, reported as a special revenue fund of the city. For the remaining audit reports, we had no findings to report for the internal controls over financial reporting. For the compliance over financial reporting, there was no findings to report. And for the Minnesota legal compliance audit, there was no findings to report. So overall, a clean audit with no findings to report for the 2019 year. The next slide summarizes, starts with some of the financial information of the city. This table here summarizes the change in the fund balances of the governmental funds of the city. The top part of the table is showing it by that classification of fund balance, while the bottom part of the table shows it by fund. The major funds are listed separately with all the non-major funds combined. So for the 2019 year, the city saw overall change in fund balance of about 10.5 million, an increase in that fund balance from 2018 to 19. The majority of that is shown in that unassigned fund balance area, kind of correlates with the non-major funds of the capital project funds. The city saw some improvements in those unassigned fund balance deficits in those non-major capital project funds in 2019. And that was mainly due to bonds that were issued in the current year or in 2019 for capital outlay and project costs that had been incurred in a previous year. Going on to the next slide then here, it summarizes the general fund financial position of the city. It shows for the previous 5 years, the fund balance, the cash balance as well as the revenue for the general fund. The cash balance for 2019 was about 2.5 million. It's an increase of about 250,000 from the previous year. And then the fund balance in the general fund was about 1.9 million. It saw a decrease of about 128,000 from the previous year compared to a balanced budget. And at year end, that 1.9 million in general fund balance, there's about 1.1 million, which is committed for compensated absences. And then the remaining 775,000 is in unassigned fund balance. And I do just want to point out here, there's a note on this slide, but you're seeing in the revenues of the general fund about 12.5 million. You're seeing a decrease from the 2018 year. That was a change in reporting in the current year related with the electric franchise fee that was eliminated. So the city, starting in 2019, is transferring those funds from the electric fund to the general fund. So overall, it doesn't change the financial position of the city, but it is a change in the reflection of how it's reported in the city's financial report starting in 2019. The next slide summarizes the general fund revenues of the city for 2019, the budget compared to actual. The total revenues are about 12.5 million for 2019, about 455,000 under the final budget. A couple areas to point out: license and permits are about 500,000 under budget just due to lower than anticipated building activity. And then intergovernmental revenues were over budget about 140,000. That was mainly in the police and fire aids being more than anticipated. The next slide summarizes the general fund expenditures of the city, showing budget to actual. The total general fund expenditures are about 16.9 million, about 570,000 higher than the final budget. Some of the budget variances, the general government function was about 400,000 over budget. That was just due to the implementation of the results of a wage study, some software training and support. Public Works was about 264,000 over budget, and that was mainly in the parks maintenance and the snow removal departments. And then the Park and Recreation function was under budget about 124,000. And then the last slide I have summarizes the enterprise funds of the city. These are those business type activities of the city. This shows the change in that net position from 2018 to 2019. The top part shows by classification, and then the bottom table here summarizes it by fund. So overall, the total enterprise fund saw a decrease of just over 2 million from 2018 to 19. And if you're looking at the bottom part of this table here, it's mainly in the water fund, the community center fund, and then the non-major funds all saw decreases in the current year. With that, that summarizes the results for the 2019 year. Open it up if anyone has any questions.
Questions? Well, just for those at home, I just want you to know that, you know, we've seen an extensive of this presentation prior to the meeting in our work session. So it's not like we're just sitting here on thinking everything's fine, but we did, you know, we've gone through that. So I just want to make sure that people realize that we've looked at that, and really what we're looking for out of here is that initial opinion that we said that we got a clean audit. And then we do want to talk. Do you want to talk about the certificate of achievement, or is Noel going to do that? I think that's another important thing that comes out of this audit as well.
Yep, included in our CAFR this year on page 8 is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is an annual award that is issued by the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA. It's a national program that these CAFRs are submitted to GFOA, and then they're reviewed by 2 outside reviewers from other states, as well as 1 internal reviewer, to determine does the CAFR as presented comply with generally accepted accounting principles, with the Government Accounting Standard Board principles for reporting, as well as some additional requirements that GFOA has for providing a complete report, such as the statistical section, the MD&A section. so that there's a more detailed representation of the financial operations and position of the city. The city has received this award since 1989, so it's received it for 30 consecutive years, and we do expect the 2019 report to be in compliance with the program. To give you some perspective, there's only 4,354 awards that were issued last year out of over 52,000 eligible entities. So that has put us in the top 8.3% of governmental entities in the US and Canada. Chaska is one of 2,117 awarded cities in the nation. So that puts us in the top 5.9% of cities. And there were 103 awards in the state of Minnesota last year. So we're in the top 3.9% of the cities here in Minnesota. This creates a standard that when we have sit down with rating agencies such as Standard & Poor's or Moody's for our debt issuance, their bond analysts know that we've obtained the certificate, that we've complied with those additional reporting requirements. And a lot of the analysis that they need to do is already available in the statistical section and in the note disclosures. So it is a benchmark that when an analyst is reviewing our reports, it does let them know that we've obtained that particular level of recognition by GFOA. Just to give you a quick overview, this report is published on our website and it is available to the public there. I think was scheduled to be published in the Chaska Herald on July 2nd. I do have to apologize. I did not get a chance to review if that actually got published, but I know Kelly worked hard to get our annual summary in the Herald. It is also available through the GFOA certificate site because any certificate that's awarded, they do have a link there, so it is reviewed on a national basis. It's also available in the Chaska Library or on demand at Chaska City Hall. So it's publicly available for those who'd like to see it. To conclude, I would like to give recognition to Kelly Grinnell, who is our finance manager. 2019 was Kelly's first full fiscal year with the city, but it was also her second audit. And this was a very challenging one because we had one day of on-site field work in March. And then on the Tuesday, we were all working remotely, the auditors as well as city staff. So this entire audit was done on a remote basis using electronic files as much as we could to share the information with the auditors. So Kelly worked with her team to get that whole process on track and to keep the audit on schedule and submit it on time to the state auditor. Special recognition should go to Lisa Nelson, our controller, who has been involved with this for several years, and she has also stepped up to help maintain the audit process this year and the financial records throughout the year so that they're ready for audit. But we can't do it in finance alone. I have to give credit to the department heads who maintain our budgets each year and work with us to make sure that we're recording our transactions, and then the oversight by Matt, who helps us as we look at the various efforts that we're undertaking each year. And of course, to the City Council, thank you for your patience as we work through this each year and bring these numbers back to you as a part of the overall report of results and the report of the audit. If you have no questions, there would be a request that you do consider the motion to accept the city's financial reports as well as the fire relief financial reports as noted on the item.
Just a quick follow-up to that. 30 years is a long time to get that award for that long. Really big congratulations to this department for putting that together and really creating a document that even though it put like the average person to sleep, it is very important for it's very important for the things that we need to use it for, and the fact that it's so easy for our financial analysts and everybody to review does have a positive impact when we go to our rating agencies and when we go to be able to share information with people about where we stand financially. They can trust that the information is easy to find and that it's accurate. So huge congratulations to them.
Anyone else from council? Other than that, I would echo that same thing. It's challenging information and a lot of data, but it's important data that we need. And thank God there are people like Kelly and Noel and Lisa that can put all that together and obviously get 30 years of awards. That is amazing. I think that's just still as important as a clean opinion to me. It means we're doing everything right, which is important. So congratulations to your whole staff, Noel, for everything they've done and for the past 30 years of being able to get that award. It's still as important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else before? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noel. All right. So with that, we would need a motion to approve or to accept the annual 2019 financial reports.
So moved.
I don't know who that was. Hatfield? So I have a motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Grau, accepting the 2019 annual financial reports. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. All right, moves us to HC, adopting resolution 2020-54, amending the 2020 fund budgets.
Real quick,
Here comes the interesting part.
real quick, thank you to Jackie too. She's done a great job in doing the process for MMKR. I've been here long enough that I remember when she started, and so now she's in charge of it. So I don't know, I must be old, but she does a great job with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.
And just like Jackie said at the beginning of of her presentation, the economic conditions for 2020 are much different than they were at the end of 2019. And if you would have asked me in February if I would have thought we would have been dealing with major issues with budget, there was nothing that I would have even fathomed would turn into what 2020 has turned into. But COVID has had a major impact on not just our city, but all cities and quite frankly, many companies across the country, and has, for cities especially, been less of an expenditure issue and has been more of a revenue issue. And, I will point out that on Friday, we actually did receive our allocation of $2,080,000 from the COVID relief, which is great. It provides some ways for us to pay for some of our increased expenditures and things we'll see going into the future. But one thing it is not allowed to be used for is any lost revenue. That's actually one of the criteria for local government is we cannot use it for lost revenue. So one of the things that we felt was important to do sooner than later is to amend our budgets in the areas that we think that there's going to be changes from what we adopted back in December of 2019. And this has been work that Kelly in particular and other finance staff members have worked to meet with department heads to understand some of the impacts to revenue and any impacts to expenditures that we might have to be able to come up with what we think better reflects what our budget will be for 2020. So I'll start with the general fund. The bottom line with the general fund is I'll explain some changes here that basically brings the general fund back into balance. So that's coming through. You'll see revenues. Revenue loss that we anticipate through the general fund includes just a small amount in our annual liquor license dollars that come in each year. We did partially refund liquor licenses based on closures of restaurants in the community during that time. So that resulted in about $5,700 difference. Building inspections, we're anticipating right now about a 33% reduction in building permit revenue that comes in. And looking at where we're at year to date, I think that's going to end up coming in pretty close. We've still seen, I'd say, relatively steady single-family housing construction. Some of the projects that we would have expected to go forward on the multifamily or industrial side have really slowed down. And so we do think that it's going to be a reduction in building permit revenue by about 33% or about $300,000. Other reductions, we are reducing the admin fees charged to the community center and the Curling Event Center. That reduction totals about $91,000. And the reason for that is those are the two biggest areas of impact from a revenue perspective because we've been closed down for so long. And so we want to reduce the actual cost that they have for administrative services that actually come through the general fund. We don't have concession revenue from Fireman's Park this year, which that's a little over $50,000 that we typically would see from our concession area. Park and Rec revenue in general, because of cancellation of programs, is about $45,000. And then inspection services. So this isn't with building inspections, but this would be our engineering department. We do inspect private and public projects out there to make sure that they're being built in accordance with plans that are out there. So we are seeing about a $30,000 reduction there. And then from a positive revenue standpoint, we did have a significant amount of increased time that we had with our fire department through the COVID-19 changes because we wanted to try to avoid having all calls of members because we didn't want to, if somebody was sick, we didn't want everybody to be exposed to it. So we went more to a duty crew model where we staffed the fire department with 4 people each shift and ran hours that made our all calls decrease significantly. And that was really to try to preserve our people and not see groups of people get sick. Most of that, if not all of it, is going to get reimbursed by FEMA. So that's sort of a net neutral expense. From an expenditure standpoint, we are suggesting that about $275,000 of our capital improvement program be eliminated or delayed this year, so delayed to a future year. Most of that is coming in the replacement of, we had Cortina Woods Neighborhood Park that was scheduled for replacement this year. We just, that was one area that we felt that we could push off an additional year. The other thing that we're seeing is with staffing. So there's a couple things here. First of all, as you guys remember in the budget process, we basically we had identified a gap of 16 employees for our entire city, and we started doing a 4-year program to increase that. We decided to delay the start of some of those positions this year. In addition to that, we also had some savings with, had a number of our part-time staff that weren't able to be transferred into other jobs, were furloughed basically from for about 2 months. So we saw about a $382,000 savings there. One area that we do think that we're going to see an increase in expenditures is in our comp cash out. So these are people who may have time that's built up that they weren't able to use, and they have the ability to cash it out at the end of the year. If you remember, one of the things that we did is we changed our policing service to be, basically they worked 1 week of 12-hour shifts for 7 days in a row to get their time in, and then they had a 2-week period that they're basically off so that we could keep our police officers, build in a quarantine period for them into their into the service period, and make sure that we weren't cross-contaminating people, which worked out great from a practical perspective. But because people did have 2 weeks between their shifts, there wasn't really a need for them to use vacation. And so there's going to be a comp cash out effect of that we expect at the end of the year. So we did add that on as an expenditure. Let's see here. that pretty much summarizes the general fund. We had some just general things for miscellaneous reductions in expenditures for some park and rec programs that didn't occur, about $25,000 there. So amongst those changes I mentioned, basically it brings our general fund budget back into balance. But we'll keep on monitoring this because it only took 2 months into the year for this to happen. Who knows what can happen in 2 months? So we'll continue to monitor this. The community center is the next one. So the community center, I'd say out of all of our funds is the one that's going to get hit the worst. And the reason it is because we basically been shut down from basically the middle of March all the way till tomorrow. So tomorrow's our first day open. So we lost about a third of the year in revenue from there, which is about $1.5 million. So basically, one of the things that we decided early on is we wanted to be able to keep people on their memberships during this, because it's really hard to get people back once you lose them. But it's not reasonable for them to expect that they're going to pay for a service they're not receiving. So we basically said for every day that we're going to be closed, you'll get that back in your membership. And so that's a loss of about a third of the year of revenue. But it also gets down to daily admissions. We'll be about $263,000 lower on daily admissions. Membership's about $558. Rental fees, so renting spaces in the community center, about $337,000. We have lessons like swim lessons, things like that, about $327,000 lower. And we will, and this is on the positive revenue side, we will have some. Maybe I'll talk about that in expenditures. We will have some reimbursement coming to us from these COVID dollars for improvements that were made in the community centers. So the one thing that it was really important that we did some improvements to be able to make people feel comfortable when they came back, but we didn't want to have it have a bottom line impact, negative impact on the overall budget of the community center. So improvements, we had about $292,000 worth of improvements that occurred during this shutdown period. So major improvements to the pool, arena, playroom. We had to move all of our fitness equipment into the gym to be able to create social distancing, which we didn't have the electricity or data to be able to support those machines in the gym. So we had to be able to put electric and data service in there. So a lot of things happened over the last few months. Good improvements to the facility, but ones that we had to do to deal with this pandemic. The $292,000, we had $50,000 budgeted for the year towards capital improvements, which we kept that in there. The remaining $242,000, $125,000 we took out of our capital improvement program, which was in the general fund, and transferred it over to the community center to be able to take care of capital improvements. And the remaining amount of the $292 will come from the COVID-19 reimbursement that we get from the CARES dollars. We will have about $233,000 less in wages and benefits because we did have some furloughs and staffing changes that occurred during this time. And then we'll have about $51,000 less in contractual services. I will say at the end of that, the community center will not be whole this year. We'll end up overall about $1.2 million less than we had anticipated or budgeted for. But with the facility being closed down for 4 months out of the year, there was just really no getting around that. And the improvements that we made, if we didn't make them, we wouldn't have anybody coming back. And so it's sort of a tough position to be in. The curling center, so you'll see there from a loss of revenue, again, we are closed down. We will we've been slowly opening back up this facility. The event center is now officially open, but you can imagine that there was a lot of delays in things like weddings and things like that that won't happen for a while. We don't have our first official event in here, I believe, until August. The restaurant just opened back up a couple of weeks ago, and then we have the curling center is going to reopen on July 27th when we start up our leagues. So we did lose about a third of the year in revenue coming in. So we'll lose about $172,000 of lease revenue from the restaurant. League fees will be about $111,000 lower. Rental fees about $123,000 lower, and then lesson revenue about $119,000 lower. We do see some ability to reduce expenditures in this fund. Because of furloughing and staff changes, we had about $42,000 less in staffing. And then we had less in special events. The special events is actually specifically fire and ice, without fire and ice happening this year. So overall, the curling center will be the other one that because of fourth a year revenue, we will not remain whole in there. We'll be at about $600,000 less than what was budgeted. Electric fund. So our two of these things are offsets. So the revenue side, the electric sales, we actually are going to be higher by $2.325 million. The only thing that is it's our energy adjustment clause. This is basically a pass-through with the city. So in our budgeted purchase power this year, we actually included the EAC, but we did not include it on the revenue side. And so basically those two sort of wash themselves out. You'll see that the sales are $15,000 higher than what the purchase power cost would be, but that's really to reflect the energy adjustment clause. Really, the areas that we're seeing impact from COVID have to do with, I'd mentioned during the work session that we are actually restricted from the state from being able to charge penalties or shut off anybody's electricity during the period for non-payment. So we have a loss of about $105,000 there. Wages and benefits actually are going to be about $104,000 less than what we had budgeted for. Bank charges are actually up $102,000. And this is one of those things that is sort of a good news, bad news sort of thing, is most people switched over to doing their stuff online for us during this because they got away from coming down to City Hall and dropping off their bills. So overall, I think over time, that's going to be a better thing for us, but it did increase our charges with the bank for the number of people who actually do things online. And then we have what we call bad debt expenses. These are basically things that we are not going to be able to recoup, or we don't expect we're going to be able to recoup because of our inability to be able to go out and do any shutoffs for electric. Now, with electric, we did show that we'd be $195,000 under budget. This was based on March, April, and May being less than what we had budgeted. And a lot of that had to do with shutdown of businesses and things like that. I will tell you, June and July are phenomenal months. And that's because it's been 90 degrees and humid for the last month, and it looks like it's going to be for the next month. So I actually, even though we're budgeting for $195,000 less, I really think at the end of the year, we're going to be fine in the electric fund because our sales have really gone up because of the weather. In the water fund, water fund, we're actually seeing that our budget is actually, let me find this here. Our budget is actually going to be about $11,000 better than what it was before, because we're actually seeing more water usage than what we had budgeted. And that's pretty much directly attributable to the hot weather that we've had. So we've also have staff costs that have been a little less because we've had unfilled positions over the course of the year. So there will actually end up better. The sewer fund. So we have, for revenues, we have about 112,000 lower than budgeted. So a lot of this comes through some of our industries saw some shutdown periods where they weren't performing at the same level. Again, we're not able to collect on penalties or bad debt expenses, so that's a loss for us there. We again saw higher bank charges because people were using more online payments than because our offices were closed. But our wages and benefits because of unfilled positions are about $32,000 lower. The sewer fund actually has an impact to it of about $100,000. We actually had budgeted to actually use some of our reserves this year for projects that were going on. So it actually already was budgeted to use reserves, but it's going to have about $100,000 increase. Now that could change because again, a lot of times when you see increased water, you can see increased sewer too. That's not always the case though, because if it's for irrigating, then we don't see that. And knock on wood, we're recommending no changes to the golf courses because John, I don't know what magic John has this year other than good weather, but John's been holding his own out at the par 30 and the town course. I'd actually say he showed me the numbers last weekend. We're actually significantly better than we were last year at this time. And the par 30, I would say, is probably better than it's been for 20 years. It's been pretty amazing, but it sort of transitions into our discussion.
Let's close it. It's doing the best ever. Now we're going to close it.
Ever, so we should close it.
Close it.
So I will say that the one thing that we have talked about for a long time that we always said would be the big decision maker of what we did with the par 30 is when our irrigation system would die. So John sent me an email or a text, I don't know, a week and a half ago saying the irrigation system died. We're hand watering the course for the rest of the year. So the timing of this project coming before us now, right after we get that news is pretty good timing. So we're actually not recommending any changes to the town course or the par 30. We actually think that those are actually going to perform pretty well this year. So with that being said, that is the changes that we're recommending in here for the different funds, and resolution 2020-54 basically summarizes each of those changes. I can certainly answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Matt?
Clarification question. In regards to like some of the penalties that are budgeted, you're budgeting for like the penalty itself and not the unpaid balance.
Yeah, so there's, above the unpaid, there's a penalty associated with it.
Okay.
Yep.
So how are we going to make up that kind of numbers?
Well, I mean, again, if you sort of go through it, at the end of the day, the only one that's really a significant impact is the community center. And that one, we're going to have to rely on our overall city reserves to be able to cover that.
I know, like you said, this was only 2 months or so worth of, or 3 months worth of, and things, I mean, this is not done. Do you anticipate that the water and sewer and electric will kind of run its course, and the community center might be, and the curling, rink might be the two things that are really heavily impacted, maybe fluctuating?
The year, if I had to guess, the two areas that The only two areas that we're going to have, well, actually, the only area that we're going to have an impact that I get concerned about is the community center.
Okay.
And the reason I get concerned about the community center is because it's been, the mayor would probably know this as well as I do, 3 weeks, 2 weeks since fitness centers have been able to open up.
Yeah, something like that.
And the track record for fitness centers opening up and people coming back have not been great.
Yeah.
You know, we had a survey that was, I think it was done through the Downtown Business Alliance that sort of looked at people's comfort level.
The CDA.
Or CDA,
Yeah.
that's what it was, that basically looked at people's comfort level with fitness centers. People are not there yet. And so I've been actually surprised how few memberships we've lost. And I think part of that is because people really value the community center as a gathering place and realize that it's sort of an investment in our community. So it's not like a traditional fitness center where you just pay a fee and you go. There's a lot of significant social gatherings there in the community center. And so I do think people understand that it's a community investment and that hopefully this is a short-term issue we're dealing with. But I guess we'll see over the next couple of weeks here. We have had people sign up for our first day tomorrow to come back and utilize the equipment. But I think my gut tells me it's going to be a while before people feel comfortable. I actually think that probably the thing that drives it more than anything is going to be weather. Because at a certain point in time, people aren't going to be able to do what they're doing out here. And if they're going to want to exercise, they're going to have to do it inside, and they're going to have to make some choices about what type of risks they're going to take. I think the one thing that I think our community center staff have done a fantastic job of is creating an opportunity to utilize all of the stuff in the community center in a way that to me feels safe. Like for instance, at Lifetime, I know that they went and basically sort of kept their fitness equipment in one center, and they basically said, well, you can only use every second machine or every third machine, and they'll mark off those machines that you can't. The way that our staff moves things around allows us to be able to tell our members that every piece of equipment that was available before is available now, and it's available in a much safer way. So I think there's just some things that they've done in sort of setting this up that I think are setting us up for better success, especially as people start to realize that weather's not going to be in their favor. And at a certain point, I think people start coming back just out of necessity to be able to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll include that table in our unexpected expenditures.
Well then.
I would imagine that, so now that that the community center is opening, the membership fee that we were refunding prior will stop being refunded because the option is they can come, but as we discussed, those may choose not to come because they don't feel comfort, but now have to start paying for it. And there's where we might see some of the cancellations tick up a little bit.
We could, we never did provide refunds during this process. We basically said where you're going to see your benefit is when it opens back up again, that if your membership was due in January, it's not going to be due again until April. And so that was sort of our incentive to try to keep people on board. I'm really glad we took that approach because I think it would be a much harder transition if we wouldn't have created some reason for people to stay on. This way people are still going to get what they paid for, but we don't have to go and hopefully rebuild that business again.
Maybe you don't know these numbers here, but what is the percentage? I mean, so I pay annually, but how many pay annually versus paying month to month?
Well, there's multiple choices. One is actually discounts through insurance
Yeah.
companies. So we actually have multiple ways that people can pay. Boy, I don't know. Noel, do you know the breakdown of that, or Kelly?
All right, I mean, ask.
The break, I do know, like, when they were doing the incentives for wellness, it was on a monthly basis. And those are all processed by ActiveNet. None of it goes through utility billing anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really don't know.
That's fine. I just, curiosity, kind of piggybacking off of John's question with cancellations, those that pay annually, it's like an expense that they've already incurred and that's fine.
Yep.
Not using it, that's fine. But the month to month, if they're hurting economically, are they going to make those decisions now?
I do know that month to month, Marshall has said has gone down. And some of that goes back to what Noel's talking about is we used to see things run through our utility billing, and that's really decreased as people have switched more over to family.
Sure.
So I think that's been an increasing component of our revenues. And that may be why overall we didn't see as much decrease as maybe. Our decrease in revenue isn't necessarily because we lost members. I think at one point Marshall told us that as far as just a loss of members, it was like $100,000 out of our budget's $4 million, $3.5–4 million for the community center. Where we're seeing our loss of revenue is that we're not going to be able to, we're going to have to credit the people who stay on as members for the time period that they've been gone. So
Right. It's going to bleed into the following year.
Bleed into the following year, but it's I'd much rather have this situation than to have this be from a loss of people who've just left altogether.
Right. Yep.
I think the golf thing is just funny. People pent up to be locked down and get out and golf all this, which is great. But I'm glad to hear that, because I think that was something that at least I personally was a little worried about when, that season kind of got off to a pretty rough start, and with really not being able to do it. And I know there was a lot of effort to get one of that to be one of the items or things that people can do early in the dialing back Minnesota approach. So it's good to see that people took advantage of that and flocked to go golf and be curious on how many first-time golfers it attracted, like the par 30 being a good example, where that would be less intimidating for someone who hasn't picked up a set of clubs in years.
But I think it's more family oriented.
Yeah.
I think there's more kids out there with their parents
Yeah,
golfing.
just get out of the house and do something. And
I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's parents with their kids. I mean, especially as we saw the pandemic at first, nobody wanted to hang around with anybody else, so they do things together as a family. Movie theaters are closed, everything's closed. It's an activity to do together as a family. And I think it just sort of started something back up again. It was something that people just forgot about doing for a while and started doing it.
Right. Anyone else? Otherwise, so we just need to, we'd be adopting resolution 2020-54, amending the budget.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. Again, adopting resolution 2020-54, amending the 2020 fund budgets. Discussion. We pretty well had that, so. All right. Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Grah,
yes,
Mayor Winchell, yes, passes 4-0. All right, that moves us into item 8D, Chaska Part 30, Learning Links, Chaska project.
Mayor and council members, the item in front of you tonight is one more step in our Chaska Learning Links, Chaska Part 30 partnership project that's been moving forward for quite some time. As we've talked about before, the Par 30 is a course that's 50 years old. One of the things that we've always been concerned about is how do we make it a viable entity going into the future. And so we've been looking for ways to be able to do that for quite some time. Lo and behold, we have a partnership group here with the Learning Links of Chaska, who have not only a passion for golf, but in particular opening up golf to individuals who golf may not necessarily be accessible to. So that could be physical, physical abilities to get out there, economic abilities to get out there. So really trying to open up the golf world to a broader scope of people. So we've taken many steps in this process. The last step we took was back on March 2nd of this year. It was actually the last meeting we had before everything shut down. At that time, we established the budget for the project, it being $1.85 million. And basically talked about, a couple of things happening beyond that point. One thing with the Learning Links group to be able to go and solidify their donations for the project to move forward, and committing to raise at least $750,000. And then designing doing the final construction documents for the project to be able to send out for bid and be able to get contractors actually putting bids together for the project. Third thing that has happened is getting all the permits necessary for that, which we have got through the Army Corps of Engineers and also through the Carver County Watershed District. And then finally getting agreements with surrounding property owners to be able to make the project feasible. So on the east side of the project, to be able to work with the townhome, Lake Hazeltine townhomes, to be able to pick up the piece of triangle of property that's closest to the par 30 along Hazeltine Boulevard. And then to be able to develop an agreement with the Goodman Group to be able to not have to compensate $14,000 a year for use of parking stalls there. So all these things are positive things that move forward. And really at this point, we're at the point where we're ready to release these documents for bid. We're at a point now where if council were to move forward and actually put these, authorize putting these out for bid, that we'd be targeting the August 17th meeting to be able to come back with the bid results and hopefully have them come in within budget. One of the things we wanted to do prior to doing that was Chaska group was able to present before council on the status of their fundraising efforts. So the two things I sort of wanted to bring to the table tonight is really the Learning Links group, but then also we have Eric Lemke from Stantec, who has put together the documents. He's on Zoom, Eric's live, so it may make sense to start with the Learning Links group and have them give a short presentation about where they're at from fundraising perspective.
Thank you, Matt. Eric Snyder representing the Learning Links group. I will just sort of recap a letter that Dave Picorni sent to the council that's in your packet this evening. And his message was similar to the one that I would give, which is that tonight is sort of a momentous time for us because it was 2 years ago, almost exactly, that we came before the council and asked to be given permission to develop a new concept plan for the par 30 and to be able to tell the public that we were working in partnership with the city of Chaska. And 2 years ago, you granted us that permission. So we spent basically the next 12 months putting together a plan and getting consensus about what barrier-free golf could look like for the par 30. And we presented that plan about a year ago and then asked for permission to go out and actually raise our portion of the of the budget to renovate. And so we've spent about the last year doing that. And I'm happy to report that we have met our $750,000 commitment to the project renovation tonight. There's a breakdown, there's a table in Dave's letter that shows where those funds came from. It's a combination of golf hole sponsorships that we sold to various organizations. There were some foundations that stepped up to sponsor different portions of the renovated course. A significant amount of money pledged and given by individuals. And then most recently, once we had the construction documents to a certain level, we could actually go out and solicit in-kind donations from manufacturers of different components of the course. And through a combination of all those efforts, we're finally able to tell you tonight that we are at $750,000. And we're not, I also hasten to add, we're not stopping there. We continue to have conversations with potential donors, and we want to raise as much money as we can for this portion of the project. So maybe I will stop there and see if there are any questions so far. Anything, Matt, you'd like me to elaborate on?
No, the only thing I'd point out is, obviously, I think just like with any group that's out there, I think when COVID hit, I think probably the first thing these guys did was go out to their donor base to make sure that the commitments were still there. So maybe you could just touch on that.
That's a great point. So for the last year, we have been working to get commitments, and a number of groups and individuals had pledged their gift over multiple years. And so once COVID hit, we went back to all of our major donors just to make sure that their gifts were solid. And we're able to confirm that that's in fact the case for all of the major gifts. So yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Matt. We spent a fair amount of time in the month of June just making sure that all those initial pledges are still solid, and they are.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
With whole sponsorships, are they recognized with like a plaque? What does that look like?
That's a good question. So as a sponsor of a whole, you do get recognition signage, and you get recognition for 25 years, which is basically the length of the agreement that Learning Links and the city will have, and with first right of renewal after the 25-year term.
Bouncing off that question, I assume that there's potentially 2 additional whole sponsors. And my assumption, okay, just
Still 2 unadopted ones.
know if that was you haven't sold them or you weren't going to, but I assume
They are available. So if you know of friends or family who would like to have the 8th or 9th hole,
Martin wants to.
Be careful.
25 years.
Question that was posed to me, and you probably were already posed this question by the same gentleman, is the fact that there's no drivers anymore once this course is redesigned. Is that correct?
meaning no long holes.
Long holes that people are using a driver on.
I think it'd be good for Eric to show the design of the plan, because there are 2 holes that I would use a driver.
All relation
And like I
to
said,
golfing, Mark.
well, and I realize it's relation to what kind of golfer you are, but I just the overall yardage, I guess, I really wasn't aware of that till this gentleman gave me a call and we talked about it, and I said I'd certainly ask the question about it. And does that change anything about what, I suppose it really doesn't change it in any way, but it just, I just worry, does that change how people look at it as a golf course?
Yeah, I don't think so. And to Matt's point, I think the three hole for sure is long enough that some people would probably use a driver. I think the point of this redesign, though, is to actually make the course more playable for a wider number of people. And the reason we think people will go there is not necessarily to see how far they can bomb a ball, but to actually get on the green and really enjoy the creative greens and interest that the greens will create. And we have a couple of golf experts that can probably weigh in on the design along with myself. But so there's probably one long hole that some people would use a driver on, but that's.
As a person that's golfed out there, it's scary out there when people are driving because you're so, you're so close together on holes that, I mean, I see that side of it as well, a safety factor. But
The question was about how, can you fire the question again? Like maybe I can.
I was posed a question that these golfers felt that there was none of the holes then would have the ability to use a driver on. And so I never saw the distance of the holes. Now, drivers are relevant to how good a golfer you are or you aren't. So that's why I'm kind of more of asking that question.
Expanse, Bryson DeChambeau hit 14 drives over 350 yards this week in the tournament. Okay, we don't have a golf course that could work for him. But for the rest of us, I hit it about 190 in the air. There's going to be 2 holes that I can hit driver on the golf course.
And I didn't have that answer because I don't know that I seen anything that really saw yardage. And when I got the phone call, I didn't have that ability to find it.
The architecture is going to be fun and more strategic. And it's going to be about bringing the widest variety of playing ability in to play this thing to make it inclusive. So we're hoping that a PGA Pro can play with a beginner and play with someone in a solo rider, which is one of those carts for someone that can't walk, and they can play together and all have a good time. And you do that by really smart architecture that makes the greens really fun. And that's going to be the emphasis.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just did not have the answer. And I told him that I would ask the question, and that's all.
Call me.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get a call back.
I called John a few times.
John pretty much knows who I'm talking about, I'm sure, but I don't have his number anymore, but I said I would ask, and now I've
happy
asked.
to help him tell him the vision of what we got.
I think there was a lot of misconception. He felt the whole place was going to be blacktop. And I said, no. It's going to be a special turf. I mean, so there's just misconceptions out there of exactly what it is. And I just did not know the answer about the length of holes.
I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised by the design that Benjamin Warren's going to bring to the table. This inclusiveness. Chaska is going to have a facility that nobody in this country will have in this par 30, because it's just going to include such a wide variety of people.
Well, we talked about that. That's what makes this exciting is that course needed a jump start. It needed something to keep it alive. Or do we just let it go, and then what do you do with the land that you probably can't build on it anyways? So it's ideal for a golf course, but it needed a jump start, and this might be the jump start that's
going to be a cool asset for the city.
Start to keep it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good transition over to Eric over at
Thank you.
Stantec. He actually, one of the things I wanted him to show was actually the concept plan, the final concept plan, so you can sort of see how it'd be. This has been up through this entire process has been a work in progress. And so literally what you're seeing is sort of the final design after a number of iterations of it. So Eric, I'll turn it over to you, and you can, he's sharing his screen to be able to show it.
Put a mask on or I won't be able to talk to you.
Well, I wish I was sitting out at the par 30 like the background shows, but it's been a great thing to be involved with. Like Eric said, it's been a work in progress that we're proud to be part of, and happy to be on the team helping the city and Learning Links hopefully achieve this vision. So what I'm just going to answer the mayor's question just real quick, and then I'll get into just a real quick concept plan of this. But basically, this is kind of the whole yardage per hole. I won't get into each hole, but I think the thing to take away is the holes are shorter. They're not much shorter than what exists out on the course today. One is just a little over 100 yards. 2 is 182. Number 3, which will be near the railroad tracks, is the longest hole. That's about 350 yards. And then after that, they fall right around 100 yards. And what is going to set this golf course apart is the interesting architecture and the fun greens that are developed, much more fun and interesting than what is there. And that's what's really going to draw people to this course. So I'm going to go over, you have you had a previous version of this in your packet. There was just a slight change to a grassing line, but otherwise this is very similar to what you already had in your packet. One of the most noticeable features of the course in general is it's going to proceed around the course in a clockwise manner. That was very intentional. What that's going to do is take that slice out of it and keep the balls within the course instead of being a bad neighbor. And for people like myself that would play the course as it is laid out today in a counterclockwise manner, starting where the clubhouse is here at number 1 and playing around. You'd have your shots going off and into the townhomes or into the railroad tracks or into the office building here at the Goodman Group. So this is going to keep most of those errant shots for the majority of the people that are right-handed golfers, their slices inside the course. So starting at the south end of the project is at number 1, as I said, is going to proceed around in a clockwise manner, where hole number 1 is going to be where the existing clubhouse is. So that'll be demoed as part of the project and eventually relocated, a new clubhouse built down here at the southern portion. Number 2 is going to have a very signature feature. And one of the things I want to call your attention to, so there's just a couple things on this course aside from the interesting architecture and the holes themselves that are going to be different. And these will be shared in these other versions, but just talking about the whole picture here is what you're going to see different than what's out there today. We call this kind of the outer horseshoe pond. It actually is a wetland. It's not meant, historically it was a wetland. It looks like a pond, but it's actually designated a wetland. One of the key features that we're going to be doing with this is we're actually going to be filling in this outer pond to the point where it only has about a foot of water in it, and then we're going to turn it into a wet meadow that'll be planted with a heavy pollinator species and flowers, forbs, things of that nature. So we're going to reestablish this as more of a wetland. The difference will be the inner pond, which initially was constructed back when there was a development project here proposed by the Goodman Group. That's why this inner pond that you see out there today was dug. Currently it's wet, but it's just wet because of the natural groundwater. It's not actually taking any stormwater to it today, but this will now serve as the city's irrigation pond. So we're trying to be more ecological friendly, not only in the golf course design itself and the use of water on the holes, but then just how we reuse water on the course more efficiently. Currently, the city pumped out of here until, as Matt explained recently, the pump no longer works. But this is where the city would irrigate water from, and then located over here next to the railroad tracks, you have a well that supplies backup water. So this pond in and of itself will be expanded. It'll be deepened. It'll provide stormwater capacity to irrigate the course, as well as a future agreement that Matt will be sharing with the council as you're working out an arrangement with the Goodman Group to have long-term rights to discharge water there in lieu of these paying for parking down here along the course. So these are going to be two noticeable features that are really going to change the whole look of the course. The other thing that you may see, and those that are familiar, are these dry creek beds, one here and one here. Currently, both they're going to convey stormwater that would naturally be draining under the course through pipes. We're going to remove the pipes and turn those into more of a feature with bridges over them. And when I say bridges, they're not actually structures, but land bridges with culverts underneath. But these bridges will cross the creek. And again, this too will be seeded with a wetland mix that'll have forbs, flowers, pollinator friendly, and again making for some interesting architecture out on the course. As we make our way around the course, again, this is that long number hole along the railroad tracks that people will be able to definitely break out a driver for. One of the key features that we're doing as part of the course is we're extending water and sewer services to the golf course maintenance facility. And that will be done when there's future improvements made to the maintenance facility itself. Currently, it doesn't have any restrooms or running water over there, so that's been a ask of staff. But again, what we're doing with the project is basically your trunk water main and sewer main run right through here approximately. So we're just connecting on, extending services for a future connection. And as you make your way around the course, it's not shown here on the site plan on this depiction. Well, probably it shows just as well here, but is right in this area, though there will be a future restroom and shelter for people of this, it's not all physical disabilities that will be out here, but those that are in solo riders, it's been determined that, a mid-course shelter, if they're not able to get all the way back out to the clubhouse, something like that, whether they need the storm rolls in quickly or they need to use the restroom on the facility and typically can't make it the full hour and a half, 2 hours to play around, that facility is a necessity. It's not part of the current project. We are just running the utilities over to it, but that one hopefully will be something that will be able to be funded in the near future. And as you make your way around the course, one of the interesting things that came to be was the ability for 7 and 8 to be, you can play a full 7, come over to the tee on number 8 and hit the number 8. Or one of the interesting programming features that the group had developed and was this practice chipping and putting green, which is another very inclusive feature that you will not find on other golf courses. Yes, people have putting greens and things like that as warm-ups, but what this facility in the middle of the course, as well as this future structure, this teaching building, is really meant to host groups, young adults, children, you name it, people within the community that can come out here and they can actually set aside an area of the golf course where staff can work with them, demonstrate them, and introduce them to the game of golf in a very informal setting. This structure, as I said, is not part of it, but that too is really meant to be kind of a small classroom type facility where you can have a couple bags stored out there, as well as just to give some general instruction, as well as some shade if need be. But this putting green and practice green and chipping tee are some of the things that really sets this feature apart. Going over here to number 8, you'd play across to number 9, which has some interesting features playing across this creek, and finish down here, which in an element that, we really feel is going to be truly what's going to set this thing apart is this Himalayas putting course that Benjamin had brought to the group. And this was an early on, vision of his to create this thing that very reminiscent of things that they have in Scotland and other places in Europe where, as the name implies, you'll have this putting green. And again, this picture here doesn't quite do it justice in the illustrative vision, but this will be a bunch of humps and bumps and valleys where people will be able to spread out, and we're targeting 18 holes. We don't know if we'll get a full 18 hole course out there as it's laid out, but that's what we're targeting. But it just gives people the ability to come out here and enjoy a complete element of the course. It's not meant to be a mini golf course by any means. It's not going to have any trickery, but it's going to have very interesting golf where people of all abilities are going to be able to come out here and have a good challenge. And then just the way we've placed the patio slab that gives where the future clubhouse will be, it gives the ability to sit out here, maybe watch your daughter or your son practice and just have a good time.
For this portion of the course, the neat thing about this is this would be open to anybody to use for free. And that's sort of in the tradition of, some of these European courses where it becomes almost more of a community park, where, I could bring my kids and we could turn it into a little, 18-hole challenge or a 9-hole challenge to be able to go out and just play around and putt and not necessarily use the course. So the hope with this is that not only it provides a challenge and practice facility, but it also provides another community gathering place that people can come together and really of all skill sets and, be able to just enjoy being out there with their family and just, putting.
Yeah, and like I say, this is going to be a really unique asset that this course will really be totally different from. I'm not going to bore you all with the details, but just to give you some impact of this is just some snippets of the plan, but this just kind of shows some of the grading that's going to occur out there. And this is just more of a clear depiction of the grassing plan, that, where all the holes are, where they would be lining up, some of the features that are out there. But there's not going to be much of the course that is not touched out there. It is going to be essentially, we're trying not to, like in this area by hole number 3, we're not going to regrade the area, but pretty much most of the surface is going to be touched in one manner or another, just due to the construction of it and the reconfiguration of the holes and creating the creeks coming through. And like I say, what you see out there in these other renderings, what you might be familiar with this wet outer pond, you will not see a wet outer pond anymore. It's going to be more of that wet meadow, wetland look. So very different than what you have today, but this has been a true team effort and just happy to be part of it. But definitely took a long time to get to this point and through a lot of effort of a lot of people. So happy to be presenting it to you.
So one thing I'll mention about next steps and timing. So I mentioned that, the action that we're requesting tonight or recommending is to actually release this for bid. And so we would go out, release it, it would be due back, and we'd expect to be able to bring back the results of that bid at the August 17th meeting. assuming that everything works and it's, the budget works out as far as where the bids come in. There's two things that we really think we would need to complete prior to basically moving forward with entering into a contract. The first thing is that it falls within budget. The second thing is we're working with the learning links to be able to come up with an agreement. And so that would identify, things like, the gift agreement, how the dollars would come flowing into us, what that schedule would look like, our responsibilities, their responsibilities, things like that. So those would be two things that we would hope to bring back on the 17th. In between that time, we want to finish up our parking agreement with the Goodman Group, and also Highland Management owns the townhomes to do our land or land donation agreement.
Is that the part up that makes the big green then?
This
It's
is the
part of that Himalaya, so it's where his hand marker there is.
Yep.
It's over on the east side of the.
That's where we were gonna put a clubhouse.
Yep.
If we had.
Exactly. So it basically allows that Himalaya area to be able to expand. So.
Buying that, or is that kind of a, oh.
Yep. So we would hope to bring back the donation agreement on that, and then the parking agreement basically is a swap. Our parking for providing them an easement to use the pond for future development. So there won't be a cost associated with that either to get those parking stalls. And in concept, we've agreed to that. Bringing those back in between, so that really on the 17th, we'd be in a position that if the budget met and we have an agreement done with Learning Links, that we could move forward and have the city officially move forward with the actual commencing construction on it. So schedule is that we would see likely around the end of August, which is about when we start to see things start to slow down a little bit there anyway. So, one of the good things, we were able to get through most of this season. And we did see a good year that was out there. So what you'd likely see is that most of the construction and growing would be during the next summer, and that you'd see this open up then in 22. So we'd have one season that this would be down.
Well, the report said we'd open late 21, but we probably.
I made a mistake.
I was like, whoa.
Eric pointed that out to me. He goes, it's pretty aggressive. Yeah.
So with no clubhouse at this point, how are you gonna do renting cards, doing?
So really, what we really view the year when this is being constructed. So I would envision once we enter into that and the course is under construction, that then we would work with these guys to go out and do the fundraising for the clubhouse. I think it's going to be a lot easier for these guys. They've explained, talked about how it's going to be a lot easier to go out and do the fundraising for that when people can go out and actually see the project going forward. So we're going to have, and the clubhouse is nowhere near as expensive as the course. And so we're going to have that time period, really, I sort of see over the winter, to be able to go out, work with them to do the fundraising, so that the intent would be is that we could be in a position sometime next summer to be able to move forward with a clubhouse. I'd say that if the timing didn't work for that, then we'd use a temporary facility for it. We'd, use some kind of, like we do, temporary trailer facility for that until we're able to finish the fundraising.
What kind of I'm trying to say this. What does this look like going into next year's budget situation?
We'd have no expenses and no revenue from the Par 30.
It has what?
We'd have no, we basically, we wouldn't have a budget for the Par 30 next year, because we wouldn't have it, our operational expenses or revenue coming in.
Right, but I'm just saying overall, what's that look like to our public?
Oh,
if the budget's 1.2 million short, and we're now going to be doing.
Well, these wouldn't be dollars that we'd use towards, again, this is par 30. And so we got to keep the dollars within the par 30. And so and this is sort of gets back to why, the why we would look at doing this is, our initial look at it was, we have a course that at the very least, we're going to see an irrigation system die. And now it has. And so we know from going out and just doing the irrigation bids last week that was close to $500,000 for just the irrigation system. So to me, if we don't have an irrigation system, we don't have a course. And so to me, this is a choice between, do we want to do something with the par 30 or are we willing to let it go?
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I get it. I mean, that's, to me, the way I look at this is if we're going to keep the par 30 out there, we're going to spend, I think, at least $1 million if we are going to do it just as something that already is. Because there are certain things that we don't meet from a water management standpoint, and we need to replace the irrigation system and all those different things. To me, the advantage we have now is we have a group that's been able to go out and raise this additional $750,000, which in essence allows us to take something that, quite frankly, doesn't work great financially now, and we'd be putting $1 million back into something that we know probably is not going to change from a financial perspective much, and make it into a real destination spot by using the donations that are available now. So to me, this is all about timing. And from this perspective, the timing for us to do this is now, because that's when they have their donors that are available. If we were to wait into the future, the risks that we have is that we wouldn't have those donors in place, and we'd end up spending the same amount of money, but maybe not getting the same result.
I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just, we're here amending the budget because of $1 million shortfall. And now we're saying, let's go ahead and build a new amenity.
Yep.
So I still think it's a neat project, and it does everything that we talked about. We've talked about the irrigation. Well, it happened. I mean, it was timing. Is it good timing or bad timing? I don't know. But I mean,
me and him had a lot of conversations on this, on the timing of it. And basically the conclusion we came to is it doesn't matter if we're going to keep the par 30, we're going to spend these dollars. And now we're being forced to spend the dollars because the big thing that we were worried about has happened now. And, some cities have gone with their par 30s and said, you know what, we're not going to be in the golf business anymore. We're going to sell this property for development, which in a lot of cases has worked really well because they have these golf courses at really nice places.
Not this land.
Not this one. I mean, we have this, the soils on this, and this is something Eric can attest to, the soils on this would not be conducive for development unless you went and completely replaced the soils. And so to me, what it says is our options are limited. This either becomes a grass field that's unutilized and we don't operate it, and it becomes just a big open space that exists out there, or we need to reinvest back into it, which we won't escape being able to have $1 million of costs into it. So I get it completely. The timing on this, given everything that's happened this year, is not great. But what is great is if we're going to keep this asset, we have a partner that's willing to come to the table with us with $750,000 to make this into something that can be something really special and be something much more than what it is now.
So I'm not arguing. I think it was a good explanation that anybody who's watching can understand why we're looking at this and moving, well, I assume moving forward with it at this point. But it's just something that we needed to have that conversation about
especially since everything that was on the council meeting for tonight other than this. Yeah.
So, all right. And then, so let's lay this out again now. So basically we're saying release construction documents, finish up the agreements for the land proposals, and then this all comes back to us again.
This will come back again on, hopefully on 17th of August. So by you taking the action tonight isn't fully committing to the project. It's, you know, because we still have to have this come in budget. And so what it's doing is authorizing us to go out for bids. And then presumably, if we came back on budget and we have the agreement done with them, then that would be really sort of the final pieces.
All right, I just want to.
I do feel good about the budget because one of the things that I think Stantec has done a really good job, and I know that these guys have also done that by talking with potential people who are interested in this project, is this is one, there's only a few companies that actually do golf courses out there. And so it's pretty easy to be able to go and have a conversation with them about this. And so I don't think any of the estimates that have been done in a vacuum. They've been really done being in consultation in connection with, there's really 3 companies out there that do golf courses like this. Now, there might be other contractors that bid on this, but there's 3 contractors that exist here that we would expect would bid on something like this.
Does Hartman still do that, or is he?
Hartman, Dunnick out of Wilmer, and the
Wadsworth
group.
I didn't know if Hartman still did that, so yeah, he's right close by.
Yep.
I know he did a lot of Hazeltine.
Hartman was the one that originally built this.
What?
Hartman's the one that originally built this.
Oh.
So we actually brought them out very early on, and they were able to tell us things we didn't even know about the course. Like how deep the bad soils were.
Okay. All right, and while I'm thinking about it, I don't know what's gonna happen with schools. Does the school cross country know about this? I think I already asked that once.
Yeah, we had actually already said that this year it was not going to happen because of the timing of it.
I mean, I don't know what school's gonna happen, but I just want to make sure.
You have to think about with this is, and I hate even saying this because my kid's on the cross country team, and I know that they really enjoy using the course out here. But if anybody had a chance to see how destroyed the course became last year during the rainstorm or monsoon that happened during this, I'm not so sure that that's the best idea for this to occur in a brand new course anymore.
Right.
And I hate to say that, but I just,
we have an asset we have to protect. We have an asset we have to protect.
We have to protect an asset, and I'll tell you what, that last year was not pretty.
If we have to go and fix everything afterwards, then we're not being good stewards. That we're paying for, for a cross country meet there. That I mean, I think it's great because I know that that's been a long-standing tradition, and they absolutely love that. That's one of the best meets because of viewing purposes. But if it's doing damage to our facilities, that's not right. Then we have to look at something else, so. All right, I think we are maybe questioned out. Anyone else with questions?
I was just going to comment that I think it's very telling of how unique and special that the project can be, that in the middle of a time where we would never have predicted, sponsors are still saying, yep, backing this, supporting this, because the alternative would be easier to say because you wouldn't question it, right? You'd be like, okay, I get it, right? You maybe give them the sales pitch a little bit, but it would be a tough sell. But the fact that they, buy into it and still buy into it because they see the long-term vision, I think speaks to the uniqueness and specialness of the project. And I was glad to see that. I'm glad we did our due diligence to confirm, and appreciate those sponsors for still sponsoring.
I'll also comment couple things. I think it's exciting. I look at this in a personal sense. I've shared my story with Mr. Kellen. I had a really bad experience at a golf course several years ago that really made me rethink if I ever wanted to play golf again. And when I did pick up clubs again, I limited myself to executive courses. So the idea of this being retooled and being a very inclusive, welcoming environment just speaks to me that I would definitely come and play here and with no fear of being harassed. So I really think that this looks exciting, and I'm excited for it to open. And then in regards to the, somebody maybe questioning the expense of redoing this, I went into our numbers and I saw that, we lost money last year. And I think it makes sense, if we have a partnership that's fundraising and we're willing to take something that's losing revenue and revamp it so that, it will flip it. It makes sense in the long haul, so.
I don't have any questions, but I don't even golf and I'm excited about this, so it's a great project.
I think it's important to point out, I mean, you had 3 people right there that have a ton of passion for this. And Tim Anderson had the original passion for it. And Tim, I'm almost sick of seeing you, so, I'm just joking, but Tim is he is the spark and the passion behind this. Tim has been a long-term member at Hazeltine, and him and his wife, Wendy, have been a huge proponent of opening up golf to people who wouldn't normally play golf, and was huge into junior program at Hazeltine, and have worked with John and, been able to do the Chaska Junior Invitational, and really have invested a lot of personal finances into this project, because he's put a lot of his money into this personally, and he's put a lot of time and passion into it between him and his wife. And so I think it's really important to point out that these types of things don't happen without a champion. He's the champion. So really appreciate the work that he's put into it.
Awesome. All right. If we are done with questions, I would look for a motion to, I think basically I'm just going to say, let this project move forward with Learning Links and the Chaska project combination to move forward and let the bids out and finalize the final deals.
So moved.
Was that Hatfield? So I have a motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second, Councilmember Grau.
Second by Councilmember Grau, again, basically approving the Chaska Part 30 Learning Links Chaska project to continue to move forward, finish up the land agreements that we have going, and then put it out to bid to see where we land in the bidding process. So exciting. So again, with that motion and second, is there any further questions? All right, hearing none. Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Grau.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. All right, we're moving on, gentlemen. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the work you've done putting it together. It's going to be exciting. What's your name? What's your name? Who are you? Oh, now I get you. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, that ends our action items. We will move into bills. Anyone? Mike? Oh, that's right, Mike's not here.
Oh, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I do have questions. So here are the list of questions and answers. So I could ask these like Jeopardy questions, but all right. So let's see. The first question was on AAA striping services. Asked what the project was for. So we do restriping of our collector roads each year. The ones that are not in good shape, and so that's our restriping of collector roads. On page 4, asking about S Brothers and Sons with railing at Veterans Park. The question is, what happened to the railing? Answer to this one is the initial install of the railing system, Vets Park, did not pass inspection, and so worked with S Brothers to come back with an alternative design to make sure that that meets.
So that is complete now?
I don't know if it's been installed. I think it has. I haven't been up there for a while, but.
I was asking about that one too. I didn't know what that was about.
Yep. Let's see. Next one is GBI Homes. It says up an idle a builder's deposit refund. So basically, this is for every home that's built, we collect a deposit for landscaping and all those things that happen after the CO is issued to make sure that stuff happens, and we hold that till it is done. And so this is a home that we're releasing that on. Page 11. The RDO Equipment Company asked what that was. This is actually, this is one of our equipment replacements this year. It's the planned trailer purchase for the electric department. So it replaces a trailer that was first bought back in 1991. And then the last one is page 15. This one was for Candy Country Express Limited. This is actually
Let's read by the boxes and plows.
by the boxes and basically the boxes and plows and hydraulics that we put on our dump trucks are bought through that company.
It is a weird name, but it must be in Candy, Ohio County or something.
The Ohio country or county. But yeah, it's basically how we equip our plow trucks. That's it.
Anyone else?
I have a question on page 2.
I don't know about any other questions here.
This is one that just caught my eye. The other ones were answered, but the COVID election distancing. So obviously absentee voting has already started and whatnot at the courthouse, but what are we doing to like make it safe for voting?
I'll let the election expert take this.
Let's maybe tackle that after bills, or is that via a bill?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw it as a bill and wanted to, but we can talk about that later too.
Well, how do you want to, is it better to do it?
To answer, no, that's fine.
Yeah, we've gone to all of the polling locations at this point, and we have plans for each of them. They're each a little bit different, but with an emphasis on providing spacing. So, you know, where we can, spacing out the judges' tables, so there's maybe, you know, one per table like this, and providing that space. Also having the guards that you see at a lot of places in place for that separation. We do intend to have masks for all the judges for them to wear, and hand sanitizer at entry and exit points. People need to use pens. We've even gotten onto that detail. We'll just be using disposable pens for the day to make sure that you know isn't a concern. And so I don't know the specific line item that is your question.
Products.
What's that?
C-D products.
They do
I think what that might be is floor markers. We've purchased those, so we'll have floor markers at all of the sites, trying to encourage the social distancing as people are waiting. So a number of different measures combined, but basically trying to maintain social distancing to the extent that we possibly can for the full experience of placing your ballot.
Was wrong.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any more on bills?
No, they're right.
Okay. Anyone else? Jonathan, were you going to ask something?
Nope, I'm good. He caught a couple of mine. Same railing question, Veterans Park, but I'm good.
All right. If there are no more questions, I would entertain a motion to pay the bills.
Moved by Hubbard.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hatfield to pay the bills. Any discussion? Hearing none. Councilmember McGraw.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield. Mayor Winchell, yes. 4-0 pays the bills. All right, moves us to other business. Councilmember McGraw.
All right, what do I got here? I guess just want to, I know we just met a week ago, so we had a 4th of July celebration and the fireworks. So I think were well received, at least some of the social media reports that I'd kind of written and seen, and so that was good. It's only been a week since the conversation, but I'm gonna ask it in a way, and it might not be fair since it's only been a week, but just kind of curious on where we're at with trying to get the Human Rights Commission and our joint meeting, if we've made any progress in that week time frame of trying to look at dates, times.
Yeah, we actually got a time schedule for August 24th is when we're shooting for. So we're going to be getting that out soon to make sure that works for people.
Good. Thank you for making progress in a week. I like that. That's a good answer.
It's a Thursday.
Okay, so then we would be looking at August 27th
27th, I'm sorry.
is the Thursday.
It's a Thursday of that week.
So that would
For
be
us
the-
to do a joint?
Yeah.
We would come to their meeting then.
That would be their typical August meeting date.
Okay. And then the only other
I want to do that is because August is when I have work sessions scheduled for budget stuff, and it's just too much to try to fit in a council night.
Sure.
Anything else on that? Okay. The other thing I just had was just to kind of put a reminder out to the public that COVID hasn't gone away. You know, as we're all getting used to wearing our masks, but continue to stay safe in Minnesota. You know, I think Minnesota's numbers are slowly increasing. We are one of the last number I thought was 32 states have increasing percentages or increasing cases. I think there's a growing concern that you know, this thing it's bouncing back if you believe it's a second wave or if the first wave really never ended. So just to remind people, yes, it's summer, still continue to practice social distance. You know, the science behind it actually does say that you have to remind yourself to do this because the fatigue in your brain you just start kind of forgetting about it. And so make sure you're wearing your mask, staying safe, social distancing, and you know, being smart to where you're at. Because I think my personal opinion is if we continue to do the things that we should do and need to, then we can make sure that we can try to have a normal fall with people concerned about schools and businesses. And like I said, I think we all want that. So I think we all got to continue to be diligent in our response. So just want to put that back out there and keep that focal into the society.
You're good?
So that is all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Hubbard.
Just a couple things, because like you said, we just met. I plan to attend a virtual meeting with the Beacon Housing, Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. Sorry, I want to make sure I got that right. On the 8th here, they have a virtual meeting for housing crisis and state response. So I plan to listen in on that. Arboretum, they are doing their virtual neighborhood meeting for the Rolling Acres, part of that traffic study and plan. They extended that. So, you know, if you go under the Carver County Public Works project studies, you can put your input into that. And then just third, just want to welcome Lisa Sales Adams. I know she was starting here in July. She's the new superintendent for District 112. So that's all I have.
Councilmember Hatfield.
I was just going to mention the community center opening tomorrow, and then also just to echo Councilmember Gra about, you know, COVID-19 still being very real. My sister's brother-in-law, I'm not sure how that works, but her brother-in-law is moving back from Thailand, and all they've done there is wear masks. That's been their biggest thing. They haven't even really done a lot of social distancing and things. That's been their primary way to handle it, is just mandatory masks everywhere. And they have very, very, very low cases compared to anywhere else. So, you know, it's controversial, but I'm gonna say it, wear your mask. And I think that's all I have. Oh, Matt, you mentioned it in your biweekly. I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but the election judges, I saw that in the paper as well, that there's just a need for election judges. So I time, I guess, for the younger population. I think that's typically when I walk in and see election judges, they're retired folks, and I love that. But time for those younger folks that may statistically weather, health things better. I don't know how to say that, but you know what I mean. To take
High
some
risk
of those.
category.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Can't words anymore
I
tonight.
thought you saw my email. I think it would be a great idea. I suggested maybe reaching out to like Crown or maybe even like Hennepin Tech or something. I don't know, some of the local colleges. I think that,
Yeah, I mean-
government programs that could maybe fit.
Get paid and
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to emphasize that too, for the college folk.
You want me to make
You're getting paid.
talk about it, I can.
yeah, I think that's going to be the key. I mean, I certainly don't blame anybody for having concerns sitting there all day, especially if you're in a high risk category.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have a Crown College employee, so it was like light bulb.
That's all I have.
Okay. Kevin?
Matt Pomerowski has his hand raised.
Just want to make sure he was awake.
So you're good? So you're good. We don't let him comment. Luke? Joel? Nate?
No.
Matt, you got your hand raised.
Just being difficult.
Right. And you're good at it.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
You, so now he thinks he can be difficult.
Just a few things. Just know that we do have a EDA meeting immediately following. And I don't know, Kevin, can we jump right into that or we have to leave?
Jump right in.
So we can just bounce, we don't need any time? Okay. I do just a couple things. Highway 41 is open. I'm sure everyone knows that by now. I think that was nicely done. It looks very well. I think it flows well. So that's good to know. Just another thing, just to keep on your radar, August 11th, there's a primary. They were talking about the need for election judges. We certainly need them, but August 11th is that primary vote. It does not affect the city. I mean, we got to have polls, but we don't have anybody city-wise elections, but it's senators, commissioners, and I don't know what other race. Do we have any state reps? I think it's just that Senate race.
I don't think there's any state reps.
And only one part of the commissioner race, so not the whole. But anyways, keep that in mind. I know a lot of people, you can vote early, get mail, go to absentee, whatever, but August 11th, that's not a normal voting time, but it's important vote because it's our senator and one of our commissioners is in that as well, so keep that in mind. The fireworks, I will agree. I thought the fireworks were nicely done. Tons of people. I see we got a really nice letter or a phone call from a resident of Minnetonka that came here. Thought it was really nice that Chaska had their fireworks. She loved them and said she'll be back next year. So I know I came from the north side watching them. There was a lot of cars heading north. So they were not Chaska residents going that way. So we had a lot of people from out of town. So hopefully that continues as we move forward in the future. Just a real quick update as well on, I haven't talked much about what's going on in our ELC. We are still working, like Commissioner Gross said, COVID has not gone away. We're starting to see more of it here locally now. We're starting to see some effects within our own organization a little bit as people are out more and family members and different things. So we are continuing to work on things. One of the things that we have decided is to try to get back to a little bit of normal for some of the staff that sit in there, is we're going to go down to 1 day a week now at this point, and just to give people get back into their normal routines and getting everybody back together and slowly start moving back into bringing people back into City Hall and things like that. So we have a lot of work. Matt has talked about a study by Leo Daly that went through all of our buildings to see what we need to make them more safe for the public and our employees. So that's getting numbers put to that. We kind of know what has to be done, but now we're looking at what is it going to cost us. We did get, you know, that $2 million, but we got about $4 million in requests of things to do. So even though 2 million sounds great, now we kind of got to pick through there, and we do want to look at, is there a way that we can somehow utilize that to help our local businesses that are struggling as well? And how do we do that? Who gets it? Who shouldn't get it? I mean, those are the big challenges we have as we look at that. But just to know that those are things that we still continue to look at, making sure that obviously we want to still keep our employees safe. We do not want to get a complete department become ill and have to be quarantined, and we have no one to work those departments. So we're still working hard on keeping that happening, but I will just say that people are getting restless. They want to do things. It was obvious. There was a Cubs game last Thursday. I went down there, figured there'd be a few people there. The parking lot was full and they were parked up on First Street. So people are antsy and want to go, and I think they're going. But that was part of this flattening the curve out, that we knew that this period would come. So we just need to stay prepared for it. But without that, with that being said, we still plan to take that EOC down to 2 days a week. But the ability is we can take it right back up very quickly, even if we need to do something special. We're meeting, and I think we talked about it at the last meeting here. River City Days is happening. So we're going to meet with the 3 or 4 organizations that of River City Days, just to make sure they're aware of everything that's going on. What are their plans? What's their trigger to say all of a sudden they're not going to have it? So that we're going to meet with them Wednesday, right, Matt? Yep. Wednesday. So we're doing that. And why I'm just thinking of this, the Taste of Chaska has now since canceled. That was scheduled for Tuesday, August 12th. That is no longer going to happen. They've now canceled. I think it's canceled for the year, I believe, correct?
Yes.
You should probably note that River City Days is postponed though, right?
No, it's rescheduled for September 25th.
But I'm just saying it's not during its normal time.
No, it's the last weekend in September.
Yeah, I just didn't want anybody thinking it was at the end of July and it was going forward as was.
No, that's a good
We
point.
haven't hit that point yet.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
So anyways, I just wanted to give some quick updates that we're active. But again, we're going to try to move it and try to get back to a little more normalcy. And as we start to open up other buildings, and I don't think we said it earlier, but the community center opens tomorrow. That's the first start of opening. The event center here is open. Curling is going to be July 15th.
27th.
What?
27th.
July 27th. Curling is going to start. They're going to get leagues start going again. So we're starting to come back slowly but surely. So, all right. I think that's the last thing I have. So unless anybody else has anything else, I would look for a motion to adjourn, and we'll move into the EDA.
Motion to adjourn by half.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
second by Hubbard.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard to adjourn. Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Councilmember Gra.
Yes.
And Mayor Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. We are adjourned, and we are going to flip right into new titles and new roles, and we're going to be an EDA department here. So with that, we'll call the meeting to order. That's Nate, you call roll. I'll make you work a little bit.
Right. Commissioner Hatfield. Here. Commissioner Hubbard.
Here.
Commissioner Gra.
Here.
Commissioner Wong is absent, and President Winchell.
Present. All right, moves us into adopting the agenda. Corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Approve.
Sorry, I got a little
Motion
bit,
to
but
approve the agenda.
Second.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Hatfield, second by Commissioner Gra, to adopt the agenda. Discussion. Commissioner Hatfield. Commissioner Gra.
Yes.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Yes.
President Winchell, yes. Oh, sorry. Am I ahead of you or are we okay? Okay. Okay. Passes 4-0. We'll move on to approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Hubbard. Second by Commissioner Hatfield to approve previous meeting minutes. Discussion. Hearing none. Councilmember Gra.
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Yes.
Councilmember Hatfield.
Yes.
Mayor or President Winchell. And that's an aye, so it passes 4-0. Moves us on to discussion items. Adopt resolution EDA 20-7 issuance and sale of bonds, series 2020E.
Right, President and Commissioners, with Matt having stepped out, I'll tee this one up for Noel. This item relates to issuance and sale of bonds, series 2020E, and I will pass it on to Noel to describe the item.
President and Commissioners, this is a refunding that is being done as a,
Is there a way you could go? I can't hear you with the mask. Sorry. Thank you. I can't hear Nate either. He's the next one that's gonna have to step up.
President and Commissioners, this is a action item to authorize and set sail for issuance of refunding bonds. We will be refunding a $2,795,000 lease revenue bond and limited revenue, series 2020E. The EDA is issuing this bond to support refunding of a bond that was issued in 2013 to support the ice arena rehab at the community center. This refunding is being done in order to capture interest savings over the remaining life of that debt. It's estimated that the present value savings are about $275,000, which is a savings of about 8.8%, well above the 3% that is called for in statute. This is being done by the EDA because this, the city makes a lease payment to the EDA, and the EDA therefore issues the bonds. So the EDA is acting as a conduit on behalf of the city to facilitate the financing for the community center. So this will reduce the future debt service costs at the community center. The requested action tonight is to approve the resolution, and then we will be back to you on August 3rd, which is the date of sale, with the actual results, because this will be done on a competitive basis. Any questions?
Rate's still pretty good at this point?
Rates are still pretty good. What we're seeing is that they're a little higher than they were before the COVID, but from a historical perspective, they are still very low on it at this time.
Okay. All right. So again, like he said, like Noel said, is we just need to approve him to go out for the sale of bonds on August 3rd, you said, right?
Yep, there's a motion there to authorize the resolution for issuance and.
Ended here. Yep. So we need to adopt resolution 2020-7, authorize the issuance of sale of 2.795 lease revenue. Discussion, any more discussion for Noel? Questions?
Question. So state statute dictates that if it's under 3%, you can't do that. Is that my understanding of it?
When we do what's referred to as crossover advance refunding, we have to have a minimum of 3%. So that sort of becomes a benchmark that we sort of use for other refundings to sort of understand how does it compare to that benchmark.
Anyone else? All right. There are no other questions. I would look for a motion to approve EDA 2020-7.
So moved by Hubbard.
Motion by Commissioner Hubbard. Second by Commissioner Gra to adopt resolution in 2020-7 authorizing issue at sale of 2.795 and lease revenue bond series 2020E. Discussion. Hearing none. Commissioner Hubbard,
Yes.
Commissioner Hatfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Gra,
Yes.
President Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. Moves us to item B, authorize executive director to sign a letter of intent with Carver County CDA to redevelop the Ernst property.
President and Commissioners, can you hear me? Okay.
Big ask.
The President was noting earlier that he couldn't hear.
He's hard. I can't hear him.
So this item relates to the Ernst House. Is it better? Okay. The Ernst House site. Bigger improvement. And some plans that we've been working on with the CDA. So last we talked about this project with you all. We were working with Tyson Talley, who is a private side developer, to do a project there that would result in 3 townhomes on the Ernst House, or on the former S House site, redeveloping the Ernst House into a single family home, and then a couple of carriage homes in the back of the property. We've continued to work with them on that project, but the challenge has been on the financial side and getting the feasibility for that project, with building costs being higher than anticipated for them. And so having hit that roadblock and not having been able to solve it, we approached the CDA to see if there might be an opportunity there. And the difference with that being that if they're to pursue it, it would be an affordable housing project, which means that there's more pots of dollars to draw from in order to make a project financially feasible. So that would include our housing trust fund, which needs to be used for affordable type projects, and also the state super RFP, which is a process that affordable housing developers can enter into to draw grant dollars from the state level. And there's various sources that go into that. So it's a one application process, and then projects are funded based on the type of project and how they meet up with the different sources. So that's an opportunity that we want to try to pursue with the CDA, is to actually enter into a grant request through the super RFP process. We do think that this could be one that would be competitive for that. And in order to do that, we need to have some level of agreement with the CDA, as they would be the, sponsoring body of that grant request. And so we've worked with them to put together a letter of intent that basically outlines a process that we would go through with them in order to pursue the grant dollars. Now, we wouldn't enter into any sort of a purchase agreement or execute a purchase agreement with them until after we've gone through this grant process to see whether we have success and whether that we actually have a financially feasible project to move forward on. And that's outlined in the letter of intent. Another thing that the city would do in talking with the CDA is that they are pursuing a number of different grants at this point in time for various projects they have going on throughout the county. And so their staff bandwidth is low in order to pursue this particular grant. And so we would be looking to hire a grant writer to support this effort to be able to enter into this year's process. So that's outlined in the letter of intent. While this is all going on, I have had a conversation with Laura Russ over at Tyson Talley, who's been their lead on this project. They are interested in continuing to pursue a market rate project on this site, and they are currently engaged with a couple of builders to get updated pricing on the site for them to move forward. So what I've talked about with them is they're expecting to see that information hopefully this week, or if not early next week, which is before the grant submission deadline. So these are all sort of moving together at the same time. We'll see how it plays out with them. If they are able to get quotes back that would bring, that would make the project feasible, we would continue to potentially work with them and maybe not pursue a grant request with working with the CDA. The CDA is aware of that as well. But with the grant deadline quickly coming, it's the middle of July. We do want to have the letter of intent approved by you guys tonight, so that we have that to support a potential grant request into the super RFP process.
My view of this is we're keeping all of our options open, and that we're really trying to put multiple different opportunities for this project to move forward, and at least keeping as many doors open as possible. And then hopefully the choice, then we get to make a good choice. If more than one option exists, then we can decide which way we want to go. But to me, sometimes these projects are challenging, and let's make it easier by at least keeping some doors open.
This does keep the options open. And what's the impact on, obviously we'll have our thoughts on if they both did get to come forward and we had to choose, that'd be a whole separate discussion, but what's the impact on the city between the two projects? Is there really a difference?
We've structured it so that we remain the same financially. And to me, what's even more important is that the projects sort of meet the original concept of what we wanted to accomplish on the site. We've talked with the CDA about the type of expectations we'd have for what the look of the project would be down there too. And so, a market rate project might have nicer interiors in it, but what the community really cares about is what does this look like on the outside? That's sort of the public facing side of it. So to me, whichever way we go, we're going to end up with nice looking project on the outside, and we built it around us remaining financially, whole in either scenario. To me, the difference is going to be, is it affordable or is it market rate? And to me, where you're going to see the difference on that is the amenities inside.
On the CDA's model, or the approach that we're talking about with them, it would place the project into land trust. And so it would be owner-occupied housing with the land being owned by the land trust long term. And so it would be under Tyson Tally, it's a rental property. Under the CDA, it's a land trust ownership model for those sites.
Habitat for Humanity houses.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
On there too.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success with the land trust homes because they are owner-occupied homes. I mean, the people who live in them have equity that gets built up in there, and so there's a reason for them to want to invest back into the property and make it something that's their permanent home. So to me, I don't think either one of these situations is a bad situation. I think both of them, we're going to end up with nice projects. To me, it's which one can we get done?
Sure.
I couldn't hear who you said was the other. Was it the same people that have the agreement now?
Tyson Tally.
Yes.
Who?
Tyson Tally.
Okay. And they're the ones that we had already approved their project. And so now what you're saying is now they're re-looking at it again and re-getting bids?
Yeah, they've gone back out to engage with the builders to see if they can get their construction costs down, so that they'd have a feasible project.
Yeah. Because because if we go to the CDA, it goes off the tax rolls, correct?
No. Nope. Not a land trust. No.
Land trust. Oh, that's good. Okay. Because that's what worried me. And then what about, I had asked a while ago, we're probably talking years now, about cleaning that site up and getting rid of the excess blocks, and you said they're the wrong blocks. And whatever happened with that? Did that ever get changed out?
That's a question of Matt.
Yeah, so the blocks that are out there, if I'm understanding this correctly from Matt, are the ones that are supposed to be there long term. But the intent has been to make that change when the site gets redeveloped, because the site is going to have to be disturbed, right, as part of the redevelopment process. And so that's the most opportune time to switch out those blocks. So they've been sitting on the site waiting for that to happen.
We're still in that time period to get it done? Did you say we have to switch out the blocks?
Yes, the blocks that are piled up on the site are the ones that need to be installed.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So
I thought I had heard that the blocks that were in place were the wrong ones, and they would have to be removed and changed, and that's why I never.
That's what you're
that is
talking
what I'm
about.
saying, yeah. So the blocks that are there today are the wrong blocks. The blocks that are they're all stacked up on pallets or whatever on the site, those are the ones that need to be installed. But we've been waiting for the site to be redeveloped and do it during that time.
And is that still part of the contractor fixing that, or are we past that? I mean, that's a while now.
I would have to ask.
Yeah, I'd have to
I would
ask
have to
Matt
ask
too.
that. I don't know.
And then I know that I was informed that if that tally still does it, that we would get most of our costs back in what we did in moving that. Is that going to be the same thing with the EDA? Or
Same economics between the two.
Yep.
Okay. And then how many units were the CDA going to build? Just 3? Is that what I read?
They're looking at, they would do 3 townhomes on the S site, and 1, and then redevelop the Ernst House for a single family home. So that'd be 4 total units. Tyson Tally, as they've developed their project, would likely do something like that as well.
All right. So again, this is just to get the letter out, keep our options open. The CDA is not going to do anything until they get some grants or some money, then, correct?
That's right.
Okay. All right. I got my questions answered. Anyone else? All right. With that, then, I would look for a motion to authorize the executive director to sign a letter of intent with Carver County CDA.
Commissioner Grau.
Motion by Commissioner Grau. Second by Commissioner Hatfield. Again, authorizing executive director to sign a letter of intent with Carver County CDA on the Ernst property at 211 and 217 Walnut Street. Discussion. Hearing none. Commissioner Hatfield. Commissioner Grau.
Yes.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Yes.
And President Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. Other business, anyone? No KFC comments? All right, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
And by Hatfield.
Motion by Commissioner Hatfield,
Second by Hubbard.
second by Commissioner Hatfield. And before we go, now we go back to regular schedule. We're out 2 weeks now from here, right?
20th.
20th? So 20th is our next council meeting, even though this is EDA. So, all right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Grau.
Yes.
Commissioner Hubbard.
Yes.
Commissioner Hatfield. President Winchell, yes. Passes 4-0. Thanks for being